Classes in session, hitting the books, Pub Sports Radio, Monday, November 6th. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack with you, ready to break down another week in college football. Running on fumes right now. Basically got an hour of sleep last night because I was working on college basketball and the billion games that are taking place today in college hoops, plus getting ready for this show and all the games we're going to be breaking down. So it was no sleep last night. We're running on no sleep. That's all right. We'll make it through, and we're here, as we always are each and every Monday, Conor and I, to bring you the breakdowns of all the marquee college football games on Saturday and, of course, all the weeknight games taking place Tuesday through Friday, including the debut of Maction. You know, we've had a lot of Conference USA, a lot of Sunbelt games on weeknights. Now we turn to Maction taking center stage on Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's get into it. We'll start with Ohio and Buffalo. Ohio 7-point road favorites, 44 being the total in this one. Of course, the Ohio Bobcats. Of course, when you look at this team, what I've been impressed with them is the fact that, you know, defensively, we have seen this team make a good deal of improvement this year. No question about that. Buffalo, man, that was a frustrating defeat for anyone that liked Buffalo. I think both of us were on Buffalo last week against Toledo. Yeah. Man, so many chances, so many opportunities for Buffalo to at least get inside the number, but turnovers, stopped on fourth down in the red zone. And they just weren't able to get that other score. They lose 31-13 at Toledo, a rare instance where Toledo cashes as a double-digit favorite. That hasn't been happening very often. Ohio, they've lost 2 of their last 3, 30-16. Like I said, the defense has been good this year. Not so much the last game. They did struggle with Brett Gabbert and that Miami O team. We'll see if they can bounce back here in this one. Buffalo at home has been really a Jekyll and Hyde team. On their home field early in the season. They lost as a 22-point favorite to Fordham, lost to Liberty, got blown out, lost to Bowling Green as a favorite. And so that's the tricky part. However, they're a home underdog in this spot. And the only time they've been a home dog this year, they beat Central Michigan 37-13 as 2.5-point dogs. So it's a really tricky game. I mean, Ohio's kind of come back down of the last few. Buffalo, you know, we've only seen them a home dog once. They won that game outright. I'd probably lean Buffalo a little bit here. Don't love it, though. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, let's hit on the Buffalo game. That was pretty good. And they got, real quick, the chances at the end to get in the number, but they just got slapped right away. It was like 14-0 like that. It was like the opening kickoff. It seemed like they went 3 and out. And
you don't help your chances to win and cover when you give up an opening kickoff touchdown. Yeah.
And you're on the points. I'm like, God damn. You know, but they finally played better in the second half. And, yeah, right down at the goal line, couldn't get it in there at the end. Ohio off the loss. And initially, when I see this, Ohio's a better team, better quarterback, everything. But they're on the road laying 7 points. I got to say it every week because I think the points in these games, especially now the weekday we have them, are just valuable with these teams. I just don't know if I want to take Buffalo in this one. Ohio early on, dead under team for me. Babano and cashed. You mentioned the last few games, a little bit more points. And Buffalo, defense was horrible early on, easy overs. The last few have stayed under. So what do we get here? You know, in the past between these two teams, there's been a lot of points and, you know, high-scoring games. So I don't know what we get here on this total. You know, the weather on all these games that we have here for the Tuesday is all pretty good. I mean, it's cold. It's 45. It's not too bad. So I don't know what we get on this total. But I kind of lean Buffalo. I just don't know if I want to go back to them 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. You know what's disappointing is Curtis Rourke's kind of been up and down lately. We thought this was maybe the best quarterback in the MAC.
I don't think he's 100%.
I don't think he's
that's why. I mean, he looked totally different last year. Yep.
Which is an indictment of the guy that actually started for him last year after he got hurt. Obviously, they don't feel comfortable enough to put CJ or Parker Navarro. CJ Harris is out. It's Parker Navarro, the backup, who hasn't played a whole lot. I think if CJ Harris wasn't injured, he's out for the season. They maybe put Harris in and give, you know, Rourke a chance to get healthy, but they clearly don't like Navarro much. And Cole Snyder's supposed to be pretty good this season, and he's just been up and down. He's just not consistent. So quarterback play, you'd expect these two quarterbacks to be really good this year, but they've been up and down, both of them so far, no question. Although with Rourke, as C-Mac alluded to, it might be more injury related with his struggles. All right, Ball State and Northern Illinois. We've got NIU 10-point home favorites, 42-43 the total in this game. I'm coming back to the well here with Ball State getting 10 in this game. They're being penalized in the betting markets and by odds makers for their bad start. And it was a bad start to the season, no doubt. But we always see this in college football. Team gets off to an absolutely terrible start. They're getting their ass kicked, and we saw it. Kentucky, Georgia, Georgia Southern, those 3 blowout losses. Western Michigan was a horrible loss. They just 4 brutal losses in a row for Ball State against FBS competition. And Eastern Michigan was a pretty bad loss. So you might as well say 5 straight blowout double-digit losses against FBS foes for Ball State. And then all of a sudden they start to improve. They take Toledo, one of the best teams in this conference, down to the wire, 13-6. They beat Central Michigan as dogs, 24-17. They nearly beat Bowling Green last week, 24-21 as dogs. So all of those early season struggles are now providing you with value on Ball State because they're playing better and the odds makers and the betting markets and the price hasn't caught up to it. This Kelly kid at quarterback's not great throwing the ball, but he can move, he can run. Northern Illinois doesn't have a great run defense. And you look at Northern Illinois, last week they were favorites. They lost outright against Central Michigan on the road. And Central Michigan hasn't been that good this year. 11.5-point favorites against Eastern Michigan, and they only win that game by 7. Their only win by margin of more than 10 in MAC play was at Akron, 55-14, in a game where it was turnovers for Akron that really allowed them to have that game get away from them. So they have not really done a portrait of winning games consistently by a big margin like this. So I like Ball State once again here. I was on them last week. I've been on them a couple of weeks now in a row. We'll go back to Ball State here. Mike New has got that offense operating a little bit more than anything. The defense has really stepped their game up the last 3 weeks for Ball State. Ball State allowing 21 or 24 or less in the last 3 games entering this matchup. So defense has improved. Northern Illinois, not a team I trust to win by this kind of margin, and Ball State is staying them in games right now, the last few. So for me, it's Ball State plus the points. C-Mac, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. How bad Ball State was early on. They're not giving them anything, how well they play. And they're just a little high on this Northern Illinois team. Even last week, they had the same record as Central Michigan. They were laying 6 on the road, 6.5. And now they're laying a big number here. And in the last 10 years, there's been a couple blowouts, but that was, 9-10 years ago with Northern Illinois. These have been close games between these two. You mentioned it. They can run it. And they did that last week. That's why they were in it against Bowling Green. They just ran it down their throat. Yeah, Kelly's not going to do anything special. We talk about the quarterbacks throughout the MAC here. He's not very good. But Northern Illinois can't stop the run. I think Ball State will be in this game. And if they are in it, I'm not going to maybe mess with the total. It's got to be low scoring. Like last week, if you got to 21, I think they cover. Like they get 20 here, I think they cover. The number's just a little bit inflated here with Northern Illinois.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Rocky Lombardi, good quarterback, but again, that defense starting to fall apart again for Northern Illinois. And that was a bad defensive effort. Now, I know there was weather and there was some snow and some cold weather last week and all those MAC games, we saw it. But still, to give up 37 points to Central Michigan, not a good showing from that defense. And that's now multiple times on the road here, or that's now multiple times where we've seen, Northern Illinois defensively, struggle a little bit this year. Ball State starting to gain a little bit of traction on offense. I mean, they're not lighting it up, but compared to what they were doing, scoring, 45 points combined in their last 2 games is definitely improvement for Ball State's offense, no doubt. All right, the battle of directional schools here, in-state rivalry. Central Michigan, Western Michigan. We've got Western 3-point home favorites, 56.5 being the total here in this game. Central Michigan was a team really, really having a tough time of it, struggling mightily in recent games until last week. And as I just mentioned, they ended up beating Northern Illinois. Jace Bauer in that game at the starting quarterback spot. Not great throwing the ball. Didn't throw it a ton, 9 of 16, 116 through the air, but the ground game was able to do a good amount of damage there for Central Michigan in that game. The defense stepped up with key takeaways as well, and they were able to find a way in that one. I kind of like Central here. I mean, this is another example, kind of like Ball State. Central Michigan had their little swoon for a few weeks there, not playing well. All of a sudden, they step up. And you got to give a team credit when they're a pretty sizable underdog. I mean, they were getting, 6.5, almost 7 against Northern Illinois last week. They end up winning that game outright. You do have to give them credit. I know with Western, they're a team I'm not really anxious to lay points with right now. At this point in time, they're only 3-6 on the season. And for Central Michigan, and it's important to keep this in mind now that we're into the month of November, teams that are on the 5-win mark know that the next game is a very big one because that would get a secure bowl eligibility. So for Central Michigan, a win here gets them their 6th win of the season and bowl eligibility. So there's a lot at stake here for Central. I like the ability that they snapped the mini skid they had with their win last week against Northern Illinois. I think they've got the opportunity here. And really in these rivalry games, Central and Western, this goes back years, if not, a decade plus since I've been doing this full time. I'm just interested in the dog in these rivalry games more than laying the favorites. So it would be Central or nothing for me here. C-Mac, what do you like?
Yeah, I think, Western being at home could win this game, but I'm not really pumped to lay 3 in the hook. Both these defenses are bad. They're not very good. It seems like now we have a big total in this, 56.5, 57. But I think we're around there. And we'll see if Bauer can have just as good a game here, on the road and continue, because we know he can't throw it well. Both teams should be able to run it with ease. So this is probably one I don't even bet. But, I look at the dog as well with Central Michigan, but I just don't know if I want to take him on the road.
Yeah, I can make a case for this over for sure. And classic situation, too, where it didn't work out in the Buffalo-Toledo game. There was snow in that game, but there was also snow in the Northern Illinois Central game last week, and people were betting that under because of the conditions. It flew over the total. You just don't bet totals under simply based on rain or snow. You have to – the wind is what you need to look for. Honestly, I've seen it for years, even in the NFL as well. Snow does not really slow down the scoring. Rain doesn't slow down the scoring either as much as wind does. So that's always the thing you've got to keep in mind. So, yeah, as far as the total here, I would definitely lean over with these two offenses. Hayden Wolf's played pretty well for Western Michigan at quarterback. He had a nice day offensively against Eastern Michigan.
Last game.
Yeah, absolutely played pretty well. So definitely the over, I think, could be the look there as far as the total. All right, let's go to Wednesday where we have more action, 3 more MAC games, Eastern Michigan and Toledo. Toledo, 19-point home favorites, 46 the total. Yeah, you know what? They got me last week. Doesn't mean I'm scared to go back against Toledo. I'm not scared. I'm going to be on the dog for sure here. Eastern Michigan plus 19. You've got 2 long-term historical ATS trending teams that are, one is bad in this particular role and one is very good in this particular role. The bad is Toledo. They've been awful double-digit favorites. Last week's cover aside, which was one of the very, and I mean very few covers and point spread victories they've had as double-digit favorites. And even then, they had to withstand a Buffalo drive in the final minutes. If Buffalo was that close to punching in a touchdown that would have got them inside the number. So Toledo barely ekes out the cover last week against Buffalo. Toledo, historically bad double-digit favorite, and under Chris Creighton, Eastern Michigan, a historically good double-digit underdog. It's just, and especially on the road where they've been even better. So, and after last week's game against Buffalo, look, take away the opening kickoff, Buffalo gets the money. I knew right away when I saw that damn opening kickoff, like, watch that end up being what could decide the number here. And sure enough, it did. That point spread was the difference for Toledo in that game last week. Now, Daquan Finn and the offense are looking really good. They can run it. They can throw it. They've got a real balanced attack going. It's going to pose some trouble for an Eastern Michigan squad that, has had their defense kind of underwhelmed the last few weeks. They've been worn down because the offense hasn't been very good and the defense has been on the field so long. But the fact remains, Eastern Michigan 0-4 straight up on the road this year, but 3-1 against the spread on the road. So they've covered 3 of the 4 games on the road. Just too many points, and I'll take my chances once again that Toledo is just vulnerable when you're asking them to lay this many points. What do you think here, Connor, with EMU Toledo?
Yeah, this Eastern Michigan team, just isn't as good. No. I think,
last year or 2 years ago, they were really, really stagnant on offense. That's the concern here, where if they get behind 3 touchdowns, can they punch in that touchdown to get you home? they're struggling on that side of the ball pretty much all season.
Yeah, it's been really all year. And like when you look at this, it's just Toledo lay the points. Like, and when you go through all the numbers here, and Toledo is going to win this game, I'm sure, but I'm not going to lay 3 touchdowns. And I know you already went through it already, because we had to touch on Buffalo. It's just a ton of points. One thing, Eastern Michigan, whether it's most at home, but even on the road, man, we've been doing this 4 years. Double-digit dog, they just seem, it's like they're a different team. It's like if they have more than 10 points, it's like they know it. And it might be rough to watch in this one, but I think you got to just take the points here again, and I'll probably do it. Give me the 19 with Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, no question about that. The good news here for Eastern Michigan, there's another little advantage they have. Toledo obviously played Buffalo last week. Meanwhile, you've got Eastern Michigan. They had a bye. So a little extra time to prepare here for this Eastern Michigan team coming into this game here against Toledo. So I think situationally there's things to like about Eastern Michigan here in this game. So again, they're obviously the much inferior squad, but we're not asking you to win. We're asking you to stay within 19. I think they're capable of that. Yes, there is a chance of showers, rain showers in Toledo for this. Rain showers likely, moderate winds. So I didn't have much on the total anyway in this game, but yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Check the forecast if you're going to bet the total in this game, although the wind doesn't look too bad. Bowling Green, Kent State. Bowling Green, 8-point road favorites. 41.5 the total here in this game. When I see 41 and 41.5 with these MAC games, I'm trying to make every excuse I can make to bet an over, because I often find that, with these teams, that's not asking a lot. And I feel I'm going to get there with the over. Now, we do see rain showers again, just like the last game. There's a chance of rain Wednesday night at Kent State. 12-mile-per-hour wind, though, so wind won't be too bad. And I was on the over last week with Kent State and Akron. Butt ugly teams. We know that, both of them. But I said it got to the point where it got down to as low as 37.5, 38, that total. I'm like, that's just too low for a couple of bottom feeder MAC teams that are not good defensively, that have been bad offensively, but they're playing each other. Maybe it's a chance to, open up the playbook a bit and get some things going offensively. And that game flew over the total last week with Kent State and Akron. And like I said, I bet the over in that game just because that number I felt was too low. I kind of think that here with Bowling Green and Kent State, just a little bit too low. And look, Kent State moved the ball last week. Kent State's offense has been a problem, but they're still running not quite the Sean Lewis tempo on offense, but they're still playing above average as far as pace and tempo in their games, Kent State. Their offense definitely showed improvement. Now, Akron's brutal defense was part of that, but I think another part of it was the quarterback here finally getting comfortable. Tommy Ulatowski here for Kent State played well, 229 through the air, 3 touchdown passes in the game against Akron last week. So steps in the right direction for Kent on offense. I think they can be able to punch in some points here against Bowling Green. Bowling Green's the better team, but definitely I think Kent can score. And Bowling Green will move the football on this Kent defense. We know Kent State has had issues stopping teams all year. Conor Bazelak's been around the block, former Missouri quarterback. And definitely I think this offense will probably overwhelm Kent State. So Bowling Green will probably do the majority of the scoring. I think Kent State chips in as well. Like I said, rain showers, but not heavy wind. I'm very interested over 41.5 here. What say you, C-Mac?
It's just, I don't love to do it, but Bowling Green is the better team here. I talked about most times I want these points. You're getting over a touchdown with Kent State, but they just haven't been good at all. Both sides of the ball. I don't know how Bowling Green doesn't, get 30 here, at least, 24 in this matchup, even with Bazelak. And Bowling Green has the better defense. On the flip side, Kent State just really can't stop anybody. The numbers have been awful for them. So, I lean Bowling Green. Maybe you look at their team total in this matchup. If you don't want to lay the 7.5, you look that way in this game, and I might do that. So this is a wait for me.
All right, we have another in-state battle here next up here in Ohio. Akron and Miami, Ohio. We've got the Redhawks, 17.5-point home favorites, 43 being the total here in this matchup. Man, I really thought with this Akron team, you know what? I thought this team was going to be, a whole lot better this year, no question about that. But I bet over 3.5 wins, and they haven't progressed as much as I thought. Now, here's the thing with Miami. 7-2, obviously the much better team, and one of the few teams in this conference that plays pretty good defense more often than not, Miami, Ohio. So they're solid on that side of the ball. It's always been a thing with Chuck Martin since he's been the head coach here to have solid defensive efforts. I haven't been overly impressed by the offense this year. I thought for sure Brett Gabbert back in the fold was the starting quarterback. They'd be able to really do better, although out for the season, which is a big blow suffered, of course, in their last game against Toledo. That was before the bye week. So now here we go with this Miami offense here now back to Avion Smith, who's a very, very experienced quarterback. He started a bunch of games for Miami the last couple of seasons. So, like I said, Brett Gabbert was I thought, him being back, look out, this is probably going to be his best year yet. And he's been, sort of plodding, sort of, average. That's the way he was playing, really, for Miami. So I don't think there's a huge, I don't say a huge drop-off from Miami at quarterback with Avion Smith. This is a guy that's played a lot. He knows the system well. They can probably put up points here. And it's not like Akron's defense is showing a lot of resistance right now. So this is one where it is a rivalry game. Akron at times when they've been getting double digits, they've managed to hang in there. And I'll say this, they also have a quarterback, a backup, a number 2 on the depth chart quarterback starting for them now because DJ Irons is out for the season. It's Jeff Undercuffler, who we saw a little bit last year at quarterback for Akron, and Undercuffler's taken over at the quarterback spot. And he's at least had a handful of starts. I thought he played well against Kent State last week in the game, 23 of 39, 59%, took care of the ball, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns. But now you're facing a whole different caliber of defense. We'll see how he fares here in this game. That's going to be tricky. I actually might bite on Akron. It's a big number. It's a rivalry game. 17's a lot for a Miami team that's usually just comfortable winning, not necessarily winning by margin. So slight lean Akron. Total-wise, probably a lean under, but I think the number's in a pretty good place. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Miami, Ohio defense should just shut them down here. Last week, the first time they get to 30 points in that game with Kent State, they hadn't scored more than 14 since September 23rd. It's been, it had been a while for Akron, who's just looked awful. I don't know. I think they might get 14 here. And the number is just right there, I think. This number. It's like, I think Akron could hang around a little bit. Miami Ohio should win comfortably, maybe 2-3 touchdowns. But yeah, this is not one that I just want to rush and lay points with Miami, Ohio. And not that I'm looking for the points on the other side. So this is kind of just a stay off for me. Miami wins. It's just by how much.
Yeah, that's probably the way. Probably the way it ends up going. I don't know. I'm stubborn with Akron. I still think there's better in this team than they've shown at times. So I'm taking 17, but it's not anything significant. It's not like, well, we're unloading the farm here on Akron. That's not the case. Not the case.
I thought they could have done a little bit better, especially compared to Kent State. It hasn't happened. It's going to take more time. And, I don't trust Undercuffler.
No, it's not easy. You're right to trust him. There's no question about that. And for Miami, too, there's still reasons to really, want to finish this season strong and play well because there is still them 7-2 atop the East Division right now of the MAC. And I do have Miami as not a long shot, but they were a mid-range shot to win the MAC. So I'm cheering them on for sure to at least win the East, be in the MAC championship game against the West Division winner. And right now, Toledo looks like they're going to win the West going away. So it's really going to be Toledo against probably either Miami or Ohio as far as the MAC championship game. So Miami's still very much in the mix for that. All right, let's go to Thursday night. Virginia, Louisville, little ACC action. We've got Louisville 20-point home favorites, 51 the total. I'm shocked this total is this low with these two teams, these two offenses, and more importantly, Virginia's defense, which is abysmal, which has been bad all season long. It's like we've seen enough now from Tony Elliott's crew on defense that they just don't get stops. They give up the big play. They did it again last week against Georgia Tech in that game. I was on the over. Really liked the over in that game. I think Conor was liking it too on the show last week. Just not a very good defense. And look, the Musket man is capable. He's solid at quarterback. Although I think actually, my bad, it was Calandria at quarterback last week for Virginia. The difference is negligible. That's the point. I mean, Musket can come in there. He can play well. We've seen Calandria on the field. He's been capable of moving the team as well. So to me, it's not a huge deal whether Musket plays this week with that injury that he's got going on. He ended up playing, of course, against Georgia Tech last week. It would be the fourth straight start, of course, for Calandria in this game if he does go. Louisville certainly will move the football in this Virginia team. I was very impressed with Louisville. That's one of the losses for me was bad read on Virginia Tech. I mean, Louisville just dismantled them last week. And that was a Virginia Tech team that was starting to play some much better football since the quarterback change. And Louisville picked them apart. Great on both sides of the ball. Obviously, we know this team's going to be able to score points. And great offensive team. Jeff Brom's a great offensive-minded head coach. They've got Jack Plummer, a very experienced quarterback. They'll be able to put up at least 30, 35, maybe even close in on 40 against this Virginia team. And I think Virginia can do enough. Like, get me 17, 20, 21 out of Virginia, which I think is possible. And I think this game can go over the total. So that's where I'm looking here, over 51 with Virginia and Louisville. What do you think here, C-Mac?
With Louisville, it's just the last few weeks have been impressive. The offense has just been solid, efficient, but the defense is what's kind of got me like, wow, these teams look really good. Because even early on in some of their games, I thought the defense was soft. It gave up some points. Last week for Virginia, too. I mean, they gave over 500 yards to Georgia Tech. I forget what it was. 514. And they got gashed on the ground, 305 rushing yards. They would have scored even more, too. But, man, Virginia, I think a little bit more. We got the over in that game like you talked about. But they had 3 turnovers. And they do that here. It's just not a good recipe. Now, this is 20 points. It's Louisville. I know they're at home. You know, I kind of lean with the dog in this one. But I think if you like Louisville to score on Virginia, you look at their team total and these come out, in a couple of days.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not stepping in front of Louisville, and I'm certainly not doing it with this Virginia team. Virginia perked up for a little bit there, started to win some games, cover some numbers. Then they got sent back to reality last week by Georgia Tech, and Louisville's playing too well. It's a lot of points. I'm not laying it with Louisville either. I'm just going to look for hopefully Virginia doing enough, and Louisville does the rest, and the game can get up and over the total. It looks like weather should be okay. Chance of rain showers, but not a strong chance, and light winds, so should still be relatively okay for offense in this game weather-wise. All right, Southern Miss and Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. We've got the Cajuns 10.5-point home favorites, 53 being the total here in this matchup. It's been a brutal season, dismal season for Southern Miss, no question about that. But they finally have covered 2 in a row. They gave App State a battle. They won as short favorites against Monroe last week. Meanwhile, you look at the Ragin' Cajuns here. This team is just up 1 week, down the next. I mean, they beat Buffalo. They lose to Minnesota. They beat Texas State. They lose to Georgia State. They have an impressive win against a really good South Alabama team. And how do you explain last week? You go from that to all of a sudden getting blown out by 20 against Arkansas State. So really is difficult to pinpoint this Cajuns team. Just way too erratic and up and down for my liking right now based on what we've seen from them. You look at the quarterback spot, it was Chris in the game at first, and then Chandler Fields has to come in, of course, after that. So keep an eye on the quarterback situation here in this game for the Cajuns because they've got Wooldridge already. They lost him for the year. Zion Chris leaving that game due to injury against Southern Miss. And then, of course, Chandler Fields having to take over the third quarterback. So quarterback is unknown for this game for the Cajuns. Keep that in mind. I got to lean Southern Miss here in this spot, and there is some money coming in on the Golden Eagles here, 12 down to 10.5 with this number right now. I can't lay double digits with the Cajuns, especially when I don't know who their quarterback's going to be right now. It's not like their defense is very good. This is definitely not the Billy Napier defenses when he coached here. Look at the numbers they're giving up, 38, 35, 30 in 3 straight games. They gave up a 37 spot last week against Arkansas State. You look at this team as home favorites. Lost outright against Georgia State as home favorites. They won but didn't cover against Buffalo as home favorites. 10.5-point favorites. They only won by 7. So they haven't been a good home favorite either this year. This Cajuns team. So yeah, Southern Miss or nothing for me. This offense is still a work in progress for Southern Miss, but I got to admit, I saw definite improvement. And their defense has had big problems, no doubt, but at least the offense, Gore running the ball, Frank Gore Jr., Billy Wiles starting to improve a little bit at the quarterback spot for them. That's a great name, by the way. Billy Wiles here at quarterback here for Southern Miss. But yeah, I lean to the dog here in this one. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, can Wiles he's looked a little bit better lately. I think he has to have a good game. Both these teams are going to have success running the football, I think. I just don't think either of them really stop anyone. Does that maybe, to this total? Because I want to take the over in this game. Does that maybe slow it down because they'll both be running it in this matchup? I still lean that way. You have to look at the dog. I know Southern Miss hasn't been good on the road, but they've covered some numbers other than the blowout to Florida State. A couple like App State, they lost by 10. That gets you the cover here. Arkansas State, they lost there by a touchdown. Lafayette's just, head scratcher. Team's not very good. They're not great on offense. They haven't really done anything well not to be laying this number. And I think they have just this number wrong. As bad as Southern Miss has been, the bad I think they're put this, like the odds, they shouldn't be making this, I think, over 10 points in this matchup. So take Southern Miss, I think, and keep it close. And I'm going to look at this total the rest of the week. I lean over.
Yeah, I would look over too. I'm just looking to see it. There is some potential rain in
There's
the
a little
forecast,
weather,
but nothing significant. I still think, over or nothing with these two defenses right now in this game. All right, Friday night, we've got North Texas and SMU. This is another team where it's over or nothing for me right now, this SMU team. 16.5-point home favorite, 68.5 the total. I mean, this offense is something special. Preston Stone and company have been running amok here on that side of the football in recent games. Just big numbers here. 36 against Rice last week, 69 against Tulsa, 55 against Temple. I mean, this team's got the potential to get, at least more than half this total by themselves here against North Texas, who are an abysmal, atrocious defensive team. And it's been consistent. It's been from day one. 58 allowed to Cal, 46 to FIU. That's FIU, folks. Florida International getting 46 points against this North Texas defense. 37 Louisiana Tech scored on them. 27 a slow-paced Navy team, which did nothing against Temple last week, by the way. And Navy gets to 27 against North Texas. 35 allowed to Tulane. 45 allowed to Memphis. 37 allowed to UTSA. The only game they played good was Temple, 14 points allowed in a game where E.J. Warner didn't play, and that stiff quarterback was in there instead. He couldn't even throw a forward pass in that game, Quincy Patterson. That's the only good game North Texas has had defensively, and it's really because the best quarterback on the other team didn't play. So they're in a bad way defensively, North Texas. SMU could, as long as they don't turn the ball over, they're going to score on 90% of their possessions. This explosive offense, I love what I see from them. They've got not only Stone, who can throw, he can move a little bit. He's not a statue. He had 81 rushing yards against Rice last week. He's a dual threat. They've got a good ground attack with the duo of Jalen Knighton and L.J. Johnson Jr., Jake Bailey, Roderick Daniels Jr., two terrific receivers for SMU. They're going to be able to score at will against North Texas. I could probably go over if I can trust North Texas to move the football offensively. And North Texas, did score 29 against a pretty good UTSA defense. And they were able to trade points with Memphis, 42 points back and forth. I was on the over in that game, North Texas and Memphis. Chandler Rogers has been good enough. Ayo Adeyi, the running back, is pretty solid. I think North Texas can chip in a little bit as well against this SMU defense. The thing is, SMU's had some dominant defensive efforts, but that SMU defense showed a little vulnerability last week against Rice. I mean, giving up 31 points in that game to the Owls. So I think you're going to get some production here from North Texas. Again, these two teams have been not so much North Texas because the totals have been so high, but definitely SMU been trending over 3 straight games. I could only look over in this game with the total, even though it's a high number, 68.5. there's a real good chance SMU gets into the 40s, if not the 50s, all by themselves against this North Texas defense here. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I know Stone left there, but I think he's fine. He's gonna go. Watch. I think he just got
right, and we'll get to Rice. Rice is getting a little better the last few weeks.
I had Rice.
Yeah,
I thought I sat with that too till the end. They played well, and we'll get to them.
They played Tulane tough as well the week before. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. One thing, because you mentioned the SMU defense, is kind of the teams that they played Temple with no Warner. East Carolina can't move the ball. It's like, is this defense really good? Because North Texas on offense can move it. They can't stop anything. Yeah, I don't know how Southern Miss doesn't get a 40, at least in this matchup. So you could look, especially as long as Stone is a go here. So I agree with you. I don't know how there's not a ton of points in this matchup. You know what? North Texas is this team. They can get that blown out, but they seem like they're going to at least get to 20. So we'll really see if this SMU defense is great. Because I don't know if I want to lay it. As good as SMU, has been, and I even laid it a couple times with them, against Temple and a few others. I don't know if I want to do it here, and I'll just wait on the injury. I think Stone's going to be fine, but I'll wait on that.
All right, we've got Wyoming and UNLV, the other Friday night matchup. UNLV 4-point home favorites, 51 and a half being the total here in this game. Good Mountain West matchup. Wyoming, of course, last week they take care of business. They played Friday night last week as well against Colorado State at home. They get a 24-15 win. Typical workmanlike, lower scoring game for Wyoming. That's the way they want to win. Just do enough offensively, long time-consuming drives. And lean on that defense, lean on their special teams, and that's exactly what they did in that game. I'm not a big Andrew Peasley fan, but he's been serviceable, I guess you could say, for Wyoming on offense. And on the flip side here, how about UNLV, the number one point spread team in college football this year, 8-1 against the spread for UNLV to go with that 7-2 record straight up. Very impressed last week. I thought they might be vulnerable to a bit of a hangover after that really disheartening loss to Fresno State. They put a lot into that game against Fresno, UNLV, and I thought they could have won that game, and they fell short. 31-24 turnovers did them in. But to come back, pick themselves up off the mat, and credit to Barry Odom and his coaching for getting this team back on the rails, and to come out and just thump New Mexico like that on the road, 56-14, very impressive. I think we're at the point now where you got to keep playing the kid for the rest of the year. Jaden Mayava at quarterback. He's playing well. They're rolling along nicely with him at quarterback. And to me, it's UNLV or nothing in this game. And Wyoming, I don't like him as much away from Laramie. You know that. I usually like him as a dog, but I like him more as a home dog, not a road dog. And if there's no way I'm stepping in front of a team that's 8-1 against the number and has just been undervalued right from the beginning of the year. UNLV for me if I'm involved in this game. What do you think here, Connor Mack?
Yeah, with UNLV, this is a team there's like no question laying 10 points on the road, at Nevada, at New Mexico, which are very bad this year. But, years back, you couldn't, even how UNLV playing well, it'd be like, no way you can't do it. Yeah, they just kicked both those teams' ass on the road. And one thing, the UNLV defense has kind of been good. Their run defense, they've been, getting a turnover or two at big time. And their worst thing they have is their secondary. And Wyoming with Peasley, I'm not really worried about that. And this UNLV offense just been clicking all year long. And Wyoming, they've had some close games, but they've usually beat up on UNLV because obviously UNLV's been horrible for a while. I think this is a little bit of payback. I don't love that it's over a field goal. But I think UNLV wins here at home. Their games have been going over, too, for the most part. I know that Colorado State game stayed under. That was kind of a crazy first half.
Yeah.
But Bano, where you didn't get the points, we got them in the second, but it just wasn't enough. I think this could get over. UNLV is just, I think they could put up 30, or more in this matchup.
Now, they haven't played in a few years, but, from 15 to 20, these teams, every game went over. Now, it's a few years ago that they played each other, but you saw 59, 70. You saw some real high-scoring games with these two teams, and you don't think that with Wyoming. But we did see these teams play high-scoring games a few years ago, no question. All right, let's go to Saturday now. The rest of the games from Saturday's slate, Alabama, Kentucky. We've got Alabama 10.5-point road favorites, 48 being the total in this game. We'll see what Alabama has left after the big showdown last week with LSU. Very impressive win, 42-28. I thought it's hard to play defense against Jaden Daniels and that offense, Neighbors, and the great receiver for them, and all that weaponry they have. That's about as good a job as you can do on LSU's offense by Alabama. So you got to give them credit for the way they played on D last week. This is just not the spot I'm looking to lay doubles with Alabama, but do I trust Kentucky enough right now? I don't know I don't think I do, because Georgia, they got wiped out. Missouri, they got wiped out. Tennessee, they lost, and they were competitive with Tennessee, but I don't know. I still think Alabama's closer to Missouri and Georgia than they are Tennessee. Now, they did crush Mississippi State, but that's a hopeless team right now. And Kentucky, I still worry about. If that defense that we saw against LSU, which hung in there, played well against an electrifying offense, Kentucky's offense ain't anything close to that. So I think Alabama wins. If you ask me, I honestly think they might cover as well. They have owned Kentucky in the past. I mean, they haven't played in a few years, but it was 63-3, 34. And even the games in Kentucky, you go back 2013, that was a long time ago, so you can't put too much stock into it. But Kentucky has had absolutely zero recent success against Alabama. But I don't want to trust Alabama in this point spread range after a win like that last week. So it's probably a pass for me here in this game. C-Mac, what do you got here?
Yeah, I get that with Bama with the big win. And you know, when I see a team like Kentucky, they're double-digit dog at home here. It's like I want to jump on them. I can't do it. This team just, when they play better teams, can't get it done. They just for years now, when I look at their stats, I kind of throw it out the window, because against the shittier teams, like, this defense looks solid, and then the better teams, they're going to get gashed. And I think Alabama will take it to them. There could be a little bit of a hangover, but Alabama wins. It's just, do you want to lay the 10.5 here?
All right, Miami and Florida State. We got Florida State 14.5-point home favorites, 50 being the total here in this game. Very, very sluggish is the best way to describe it, Florida State against Pittsburgh. But a win is a win. It was pretty ugly, but they'll take it. And look, they did have Miami come. I don't want to say a look ahead, but I think it was more just the elements. You know, you're going to the cold weather. You know how those Florida kids, they don't love going to the Northeast in November. And I think we saw evidence of that with Florida State. Just a very sluggish performance, but they grinded it out. They won 24-7. The defense shut down the Pitt offense, which hasn't been good. And it took a while to get going on offense with Travis and the Seminoles offense, but eventually they got going and they did enough to get the job done. Didn't cover those 20.5-point favorites. So here's what I worry about for this game. I mean, Miami now, their season's kind of gone backward. They're now 6-3, the third loss against NC State on Saturday. Brutal effort, 6.5-point favorites. They get blown out, lose by 14. The offense was dreadful in that football game. Absolutely. And that's what you get from Tyler Van Dyke sometimes. That's what he's been his whole career here at Miami. He has these great little glimpses of brilliance and then an absolute stink bomb like he had against NC State with 173 passing yards and 3 interceptions in that game. So, yeah, Kong's Clips, great point. And shout out to everyone in the chat. We haven't mentioned you yet, but we should thank you guys for tuning in. Hit the like button. But great point, Kong's Clips, about the receivers, Coleman, Wilson, banged up for Florida State, questionable for this game. Will they be available? The thing that I get concerned about is I don't think I want to step in front of Florida State here, but I don't know if I'll be laying 14.5, because this feels like Notre Dame Clemson, where, yeah, the season's getting away from Miami, just like it was for Clemson, but Clemson had Notre Dame coming in, and it got Clemson riled up. Clemson showed up for that game against Notre Dame, and credit to them, even though the season's kind of been disappointing for them. I sense Miami is going to feel that way too. Like, our season's kind of getting away from us now, third loss last week, but this is Florida State. This is a chance to play spoiler. This is a rival. You get pumped up. So that's going to keep me off Florida State. I don't want Miami, but that thinking, that thought process in my mind is going to keep me off Florida State here. What do you think here, Connor?
Miami. I talked about it last week with Jimmy, because I just hear all these articles I read with Van Dyke's just not right. I think they got to go with Williams.
Yeah.
And I saw it last week. Van Dyke, they're like, he can't push the ball downfield.
No, and he can dunk everything. Go to Emory Williams at this point. You have to.
So he's got to go. I don't think you play him in this one. Yeah, the whole wide receiving core here for especially Wilson and Coleman are banged up for Florida State. This used to be the massive rivalry. Yeah, it still is. It's it's the Florida State. I think Florida State wins. I just don't know if I want to lay over 2 touchdowns. And I don't know if I want Van Dyke. This is a wait and see too. I think you just throughout the week I gotta look at a few more things before I even look at a bet.
See who's at quarterback for Miami. See how healthy that receiving core is for Florida State. But that defense is nasty.
They should get to Miami. Yeah, that defense should.
And the O-line is struggling again. What else is new for Miami the last few weeks as well? NC State doesn't have anything close to the defense that Florida State does, and they blew up the line of scrimmage repeatedly last week against Miami. So that's a concern going against that. Jared Verse is going to be an NFL pass rusher, this guy on Florida State's D-line. So you got to worry about him and a lot of good pass rushers and a lot of pressure up front from Florida State. So that's a concern for sure for Miami. All right, Vanderbilt, South Kakalaki. The Gamecocks, 14-point home favorites, 58 the total. Quite the escape for South Carolina. That was a great game for me last week. Jacksonville State plus the points, the over as well in that game against South Carolina. It was a game, though, that South Carolina, with their 8 or 9 different starting offensive line combinations this year, finally played a team that was just – they didn't have the pass rush. And that's been an issue for Jacksonville State. The pass rush hasn't been great. I figured that was a game where Spencer Rattler and the offense could finally get going and get some confidence, and that was a good offensive game. They scored points, moved the football pretty well in that game. And here's the situation where that's how you handicap South Carolina. When the team's got a bad defense and a bad weak pass rush, they're going to be able to move the ball because the O-line issues aren't going to get exploited against a team like Jacksonville State last week. Same thing here. Vanderbilt's not going to be able to exploit the weakness of South Carolina. There's no pass rush. The defense is a sieve for Vanderbilt. I mean, this should be an opportunity for South Carolina to be able to move the football, score some points. I could only look at the favorite here, and I always try to make a case. I can't make a case for this dog. Vanderbilt is brutal right now. I mean, they had that one cover against Georgia because Georgia sleptwalked, and since then they've been beaten by Auburn and Ole Miss 64-22. Okay, in the last 2 games combined. So I am not interested in Vanderbilt. This is South Carolina or nothing for me. I might get there with the over, hoping that Vanderbilt can at least do something, do enough offensively, because I have this in the range of like 35, 38 to 21, and that would just get you over the total. I could see that being your final score here. So South Carolina and over my leans here. What do you like, Connor?
Well, yeah, I get that. And that's another reason why Vandy just hasn't been a good dog and you haven't been able to take him when you can't score. You have to be able to score here to cover a number because they're always big dogs. Like that's what in this match, when I look at this, I'm like, I don't really want to lay 2 touchdowns in South Carolina. I didn't like that last week. They probably win here. They score in the 30s. Maybe look at their team total for them. But, yeah, I can't look at Vandy until, they can cover numbers, which the Florida, like you are, they just sleptwalked through that game. They scored 20 points, and then they put up 7 and 15 to, Ole Miss and Auburn. South Carolina, this defense isn't great. Is this the week, though? Can Ken Seals maybe get, 21 or more? Maybe. All year long, they've been horrible. If you back them, you're 1-9, you haven't won any money. So it's like jumping in a little late. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Definitely for me, favorite and over if I'm getting involved. Haven't decided yet. Those are just on the radar as of early in the week. All right, Duke, North Carolina. We got the Tobacco Road rivalry. And I know basketball is a huge rivalry. Well, Duke's a lot better in football now, and we know North Carolina has been good the last few years. So the football rivalry has stepped its relevancy here. North Carolina, 11-point home favorites, 50.5 being the total in this game. For Duke, obviously, we see they've had to deal with a lot right now. We knew the Wake Forest game last week was going to be a problem for them, obviously, with Riley Leonard in that game. They had Henry Beelan, and Henry Beelan's just not ready to be, a productive starting quarterback at this point. We will have to wait. Actually, he didn't play that. It was actually Grayson Loftus, beg your pardon, got the start against Wake the other night. And you look at
it, wasn't a difference.
It wasn't any better. It was not any better. 10 for 24, 41% on the year. Last week against Wake, 7 for 19, 36.8%, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So Grayson Loftus did not give Duke's offense that pop at the quarterback spot that Henry Beelan could not. But do I want to lay 11 with North Carolina right now? I mean, this is a team that's just, you get concerned about where their heads are at now. 7-2 on the season. All of a sudden, they had the 2 losses, Georgia Tech and Virginia. I throw out the Campbell game last week. They're playing an FCS team. I just don't know if I can back Duke. I love Duke as a double-digit dog under Mike Elko most of the time. You know that. But with this quarterback and this offense, which is just completely stuck in mud right now since Riley Leonard went down, I don't know if I can do it. So probably a pass right now. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I just don't know if I can get involved. And you don't know who's going to play quarterback, or if like Loftus is going to go out there. How can you take it? This game last year too, North Carolina, but remember Duke covered. It was like 38-35. It was pretty close. I mean, if Riley Leonard evens a go with his ankle, this will drop. I just don't want to lay 10.5. I'd be on Duke, which is scary. I still think they have a pretty good defense. And what do we get from North Carolina? The old defense has, been back. In that Georgia Tech game, Georgia Tech, has a lot better offense. But maybe Duke could move it a little bit. But we got a shit ton of football games. To me, it's Duke or nothing. But I don't know if I want to be on this dog.
All right, Virginia Tech, Boston College. We've got Boston College here, 1 point, home favorites, 49 being the total here in this game. Look, I'll take it. I'm happy I won, but man, that was that game was not easy to watch that last week. Boston College and Syracuse on that Friday night game. I mean, Syracuse, they're just begging Boston College to win that game, and Boston College at times said, "Hey, we don't want to win this game, Syracuse. Here you go." But eventually, Boston College put it away and won by a score of 17-10. A very ugly performance, probably one of the worst games I've seen from Castellanos. So I think it's given them some life on offense, but I thought it was a kind of a struggle for him, especially in the passing game against Syracuse last week. He's going to have to step it up here because Virginia Tech last week the offense got shut down by a very good Louisville team on the road, but I don't think you can trust that offense to play as bad here. Boston College, not the same level of defense as Louisville. And keep in mind, Kyron Drones had played very well at quarterback for Virginia Tech before that Louisville debacle. I think he can bounce back here. You look at this matchup here, Boston College, their offense here, I think has a bounce back. I could see the over coming through here. It's a low total, 49. I think it's got potential. I think I lean a little to Virginia Tech here. Now, the one concern would be on the road. This team is, I believe, now 0-4 straight up. So this team's road performances now, do we trust them? I think they're the better team right now in their current form. Although Boston College, give them credit, they're 6-3. And I should retract that because, you look at Boston College and, their schedule, it hasn't been brutally tough, but, you do have a win against Georgia Tech. You did take Florida State right down to the wire. You have some decent results, no question. So I still think Virginia Tech will have a much better game. I still lean Tech. I might stay off it now looking at that winless record for the Hokies on the road, but I think the over, just because that total is just a little bit low in my opinion. What do you think here, Connor? Virginia Tech, BC.
Shout out to our guy, Big Show, in the chat. Preston, he's shoveling snow, mowing the lawn. Yeah, shit don't change, my man. Jake Burns, my guy, Nuke Worker, Kong's Clips.
By the way, I do see the questions about CBB stuff. I think we're waiting until football passes by a little bit. We get a little deeper toward the end of the football season. Then we'll be maybe ushering in some basketball shows. We're taking it a little later in the season, I think, before we ramp things up with basketball. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, there will be basketball shows here coming soon. So.
Closer to December, January. It won't be right away if we have them.
Yeah. A lot of fucking games today, man. Oh, goddamn. Yeah. All right. Let's hit this one. I think Virginia Tech plays better this week after, just couldn't do anything against Louisville and Drones. But I don't really want them. This seems like just a close football game. 23-20, something like that. I think Boston College, though, back here at home, I kind of lean their way. I'd be on Boston College. I think they can run the ball. and keep running on Virginia Tech. Just don't make any mistakes in this one. So I like Boston College here a little bit.
All right, we stay in the ACC here. NC State and Wake Forest. We've got NC State 2.5-point road favorites, 45 being the total here in this game. Should be an interesting matchup. I got to give NC State credit. I mean, now that's 2 weeks in a row with wins against Clemson and Miami. Very impressive on defense. They're starting to get back to that, really good Dave Doran defense we saw last year. MJ Morris hasn't been great, but he hasn't needed to be great. What's hilarious about NC State is, they've had troubles running the ball. Concepcion's a very nice receiver. I don't know what they'd do without him on this NC State team. But they are now using the guy that was basically benched at quarterback, Brennan Armstrong, as their leader. He was their leading rusher against Miami last week. Brennan Armstrong, the guy that started the year as the quarterback. Yeah, he was their leading rusher last week against Miami. But hey, he's actually not bad in that regard. And credit for him being a team player. He knows he's a quarterback by trade, but he lost his job to MJ Morris, and now he's willing to be used in a running back role. So credit to him right now for NC State. But they're getting creative. I actually think they can win this game. I mean, I wouldn't want to lay much more than 2.5, but I think right now, current form-wise, you got to like more of what you see from NC State than Wake Forest. I mean, Wake Forest, 5 of their last 6 games they've lost. They find a way to lose a game they probably should have won against Duke with a third-string quarterback, Loftus at QB for them. So losing that game doesn't impress me, even though they covered in that game for Wake Forest. At home, it hasn't been anything to write home about. They shouldn't have won the one home game that they did win recently was the Pitt game. They shouldn't have won that. That game, that should have been first down. Pitt should have been able to run up the clock, and it was a bad call that gave Wake a chance to win that game. They got drilled by Florida State at home. They lost to Georgia Tech at home as favorites. Just not very good. I think NC State's the better of these two teams, and you're only asking them to win the game. So Wolfpack or nothing for me here, C-Mac. What do you think?
Yeah, Wolfpack, I want the last 2 weeks at home. It's where I wanted them. This is on the road, so I always pump the brakes because we saw that, they're not winning it with their offense and Morris. But the defense has just stepped up. I mean, they're playing a lot better. Those last couple of games, shutting down with those wins has been impressive. And now they go on the road to Wake Forest, a team that I don't know how they move the ball. I was going through the last night when these teams play, and they're just overs. Man, the points are crazy. The last 10 years, I think they would all get over this number. So that makes me pump the brakes. That maybe we just get points, but I'd only want the under. Wake Forest has an all right defense. That's how they have to stay in games because they can't move the football. The quarterback play has been awful. They just don't do much well. But I think the defense has been okay, and it's kept them in games all year long. And they're going to need them here. So I could, I lean under here a little bit. And I kind of like NC State. I just now on the road. I've got a couple wins the last couple of weeks. Yeah. I lean them, but I don't think I could be on them.
All right, next up, again, ACC, Georgia Tech and Clemson. We've got Clemson 14.5-point home favorites, 55.5 the total. Look, credit to Dabo getting the troops rallied. A disappointing season that's on the verge of falling apart with those losses they had, the Miami loss, the NC State loss, and then all of a sudden, though, Dabo rallies the troops somehow and gets them, to be revved up to play at Notre Dame at home. They come out firing. It was a great game from their defense, a great game from Cade Klubnik, much better. And is everything right again with Clemson now because they beat Notre Dame? There's Dabo in the post-game press conference. The players around him thumping his chest saying, now's the time to buy stock in Clemson in his post-game press conference. And he says that, and I'm selling stock on Clemson here in this game. I don't buy it that they're going to be able to bring it for a second straight week when, again, still, last week's win against Notre Dame doesn't change shit for this team. They're going to the Mayo Bowl. Okay, that's where they're going to end up playing, essentially. In a minor bowl game is their destination at this point for the Clemson Tigers with their 5-4 record. They still need a win to be bowl eligible, and they've only got 3 more games left. So I don't trust this team to have that same fire in their belly and that emotional charge to play Notre Dame as they will here against Georgia Tech. I like Georgia Tech here plus the points. I mean, Georgia Tech is Haynes King, and that offense is getting better. It's been the best part of that team. Their defense is still very leaky. I get it, but much better against Virginia last week in that 45-17 win. And you look at some of their recent results. They beat North Carolina. They beat Virginia 2 in a row. They have the upset win against Miami. 3 of their last 4 games they've won and covered. I think it's tough to get margin right now against the Yellow Jackets with how well on offense in particular they're playing. So it's Georgia Tech for me at this number. What about you, C-Mac?
Yeah, can they keep this rolling after the win for Clemson? Back it almost seems a little bit flat. And a Georgia Tech team, usually they just kick their ass. They're still dealing with a ton of injuries. And the defense made some big plays. That's been the one thing, the defense I thought's been pretty good all year for Clemson. And they made some plays against Hartman, especially in that first half, and jumped on Notre Dame last week. But I've said all year, to me, it's Georgia Tech. They're getting these points because they can score. We talked about a dog in Vanderbilt I don't want. This is a team that I know can move the ball. They have athletes all over the place on offense. Haynes King has been pretty good. He will make mistakes, and he might, in this game. But I think they could put up some points and hang around, Or I get slapped here in Clemson, rolls them and think they're just back, like Dabo says. But I'm with you. I think, at over 2 touchdowns, it's too many.
Yeah, I think there's great. Look, Notre Dame's a big-time program. You got them at home. That's just the name brand that's going to get you pumped up to play a football game. But now reality is going to set in at practice this week. We're 5-4. We're going to play in the Mayo Bowl or the Liberty Bowl or the fucking Camping World Bowl, some minor bowl game. You go on down the list. They'll be in one of those this year, and that's not what they came to Clemson. That's not what they signed up for. This team. So I think it's going to be hard for Dabo to tap the motivation meter this week against Georgia Tech, much harder than it was last week. All right, next up, we've got Oklahoma State UCF. We go to the Big 12. It is Oklahoma State 2.5-point road favorite, 64 the total, fresh off the victory in the final Battle of Bedlam last week against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
This has been one of the better coaching. Gundy's had a lot of good coaching jobs. This is one of his best because I thought Oklahoma State was going to have a garbage, just dreadful season early on with what I was seeing. And I thought rock bottom for them was the loss against South Alabama at home. And since then, they have just become a machine again. Alan Bowman and the offense, it's back to that old school Oklahoma State explosive up-tempo offense, putting up points in bunches. Defense is it's not a shutdown defense, but they get timely stops. They force turnovers. They did that last week against Dylan Gabriel and Oklahoma to preserve that win. So it was a great win for Oklahoma State. They're on a roll. I don't want to step in front of them, and I'm not going to step in front of them, but this is not the spot I'd really want to back them either. They are, potential letdown spot. But again, this is kind of be careful with this stuff, with the letdown theory. That can't be your only reason to bet against a team. You got to have a tangible reason to like the other side. Because look what happened with Kansas and Iowa State last week. Everybody talking about, letdown spot for Kansas after they beat Oklahoma. Iowa State,
Iowa State. Iowa State. Yeah.
I said last week, I don't love it with Iowa State because I still think Kansas is the better team. And Kansas showed again last week they're the better team. And I feel this game is the same thing. Oklahoma State's they're the much better team. UCF didn't cover the closing number last week against Cincinnati, who are awful right now. And UCF life and death to win that game last week against the Bearcats. I was not impressed one bit by UCF last week. There's no way I want UCF. Letdown spot potential be damned. I will not be on UCF here. I don't think they're very good right now. They have a terrible defense. Oklahoma State could run amok or do a significant damage against them. And I don't want to just take UCF. I need more than a letdown spot for Oklahoma State to take UCF. And to me, I don't have enough to take UCF because I don't think there's a very good team right now. And I think Oklahoma State's better. And we could have Kansas, Iowa State part 2 right here, where everyone takes UCF for the letdown for Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State still wins the game. Why? Because they're just the better team right now. What do you think you've seen?
We'll get to them later, but the most impressive thing of that was Kansas's defense because I didn't think they played better because I thought that's where they get exposed in that game last week, and they did it, and they jumped out early and kind of hung on. But I think we have them later on, which we'll get to. Yeah, Oklahoma State. Where's Jose at? They won. I loved it. I had a money line, which was great. I don't know how they don't move the ball though. Even being here at the bounce house, how they don't score 35. This UCF defense is not very good. I think this we got a high total here, but I think it can get over the number, especially if this was a little bit lower than what this number is now. I think there's points back and forth, back and forth. I don't love fading UCF at home, but this could be close. I'll just roll with the over. Over.
I agree with that. I probably will bet the over. I'll probably stay off the side. Although I'll tell you what, I'm closer to betting Oklahoma State than I am UCF because
this is big for them to get another win. I think Oklahoma State against a UCF team that's just kind of mid. This would be another great win, Oklahoma State, to keep it rolling.
Yeah.
On the run. I think, they can.
This feels too much to me like Kansas, Iowa State, the sequel, where everyone loved Iowa State only because of the letdown factor for Kansas after the win against Oklahoma. And Kansas said, no, screw that. We're the better team.
Yeah. But I liked Iowa State the way they've been playing football. Yeah. And that didn't come out. So that's why they play the game.
Yeah. And they're really struggling. Both of those teams, UCF and Cincy, that played each other last week, they're struggling as they step up in Big 12 play this year for the first time. All right. Ole Miss and Georgia. We got Georgia 11-point home favorites. Total here 58.5 across the board in this one. Georgia's just I did get a winner with Missouri last week. It was close, but we got it. We got the money with Missouri plus the points. Georgia. This is probably a game though where Georgia, not that they weren't up for Missouri, they were. It's just their point spreads are. Their games are coming close to the point spread. That's what I'm trying to say. Their games are coming close to the point spread right now. I don't know about this defense, though, for Ole Miss. Can they really, after what I saw last week against A&M, I mean, they had a lead. They had a comfortable lead, and there's A&M and Max Johnson marching right down the field, not once but twice, to come back and take that game away from Ole Miss. I don't know if I can trust a defense like that on the road. That's my problem with taking Ole Miss here, plus the points in this game. Maybe over. Because Jackson Dart and the offense are doing a lot of good things. Georgia's defense has been good this year. I don't think it's that elite, dominant Georgia defense we've seen in the past. Georgia, I think Carson Beck and company, and Carson Beck and the offense, they've adjusted to life without Brock Bowers. We thought that would be just the be-all, end-all, but no, they're starting to show that, hey, we can move the football. We can be a good, productive enough offense without him. And you're seeing Georgia adjust to life without him. Their offense was pretty good last week against Missouri, especially in the second half. So I might get there with over in this game, but probably nothing as far as the side goes. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I just know if Georgia comes to play here, they win and cover this number. This has come down.
Last time we saw Ole Miss on the road against a really, really good team, Alabama, they shit the bed in the second half. I remember it.
Lane Kiffin. Yeah. Big games. I don't want him at all. And I was not impressed. The offense looked okay against A&M, and that defense they just let A&M back in that game.
Just collapsed. Well, their offense was good. They did enough, and then the defense just gave it up.
Just gave it up, getting that horrible prevent defense, which I fucking hate. But Georgia, this is. Prevents. That's what. Yeah. I always call it prevent defense prevents you from winning. My favorite line there. Georgia, God, if they come, this is basically their other biggest game. They had the softest schedule, I've ever seen. Basically, I think you lay with them. That's where I'd be. Yeah, I'm gonna look at it some more. Obviously, they should be pumped for this being at home, and this is basically their biggest game. So I'd lay it.
All right, Minnesota and Purdue here. Big Ten matchup. Purdue minus 146.5. The total here. Slight home favorites in this game. Minnesota, an offense that's frustrated me all year, but they did finally show some life last week against Illinois, albeit they fall short 27-26 in that game. They still need a win to be bowl eligible, so important game for Minnesota. Purdue on the flip side, 4 straight losses. They do cover against Michigan because they score with 15 seconds left on 4th down in that game. Tough beat if you had Michigan, who've been just covering all these big numbers, and finally it did not happen against Purdue last week. But Purdue's just struggling on defense. I mean, they've given up 31 plus in 3 straight games. They just have been miserable on that side of the football. Hudson Card is okay, but not great. Their run game, we can't trust. And it's a huge gap defensively between these two teams. Purdue defensively this year has been just awful. But the Minnesota defense, at least against the run, they're pretty good. And when you look at the Purdue team, they've struggled basically consistently to throw the ball and run the ball. So I don't know. I can't lay it with Purdue. I can't take Purdue as a favorite here. I probably have to lean Minnesota, but I don't love the game. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Purdue can't win at home. I mean, like, this is a game, like, maybe they could win. I just can't do it. I want none of my money to be on them.
Hey, Minnesota won at Iowa. Comparable team. Yeah, actually, Iowa. Yeah, Purdue, but Minnesota or nothing for me.
The Purdue defense has just been gashed. Minnesota game, if you want to look under, but this could get over just how Purdue. They're just not a Purdue team of the past playing any defense really. It seems like they give up 40 every week, and I just don't know if I want to bet this at all. This is pass. Next.
And I'm not a Kaliakmanis fan either at quarterback for Minnesota, but it's not like he's facing, McCarthy or, Talia or one of the better quarterbacks here in the Big Ten. This is a guy that's on his level. And in fact, he probably is. Hudson Card might even be slightly below even Kaliakmanis with some of the numbers he's had in recent games. All right, next up, Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, here they are against Penn State, one of the bigger matchups on Saturday. Michigan 4.5-point road favorites, 44.5 the total. You know where I'm going in this game, and we've talked. You can go back a few weeks ago to my Penn State Ohio State analysis. The number was short on Ohio State. I said you take Ohio State or nothing in that game. Same thing here, and I know this is in Happy Valley. This is on the road for Michigan, but it's the same thing here. Michigan or nothing for me. James Franklin against Ohio State, Michigan, or anybody good, I ain't trusting him. Sorry, that's. No way. Just not happening. Show me you can win a big game against one of these Big Ten behemoths like an Ohio State. Show me you can beat Ryan Day. Show me you can beat Jim Harbaugh. He hasn't been able to do that here since he's been at Penn State. Drew Aller is underwhelmed. It's been a dink and dunk offense. The run game was shut down by Ohio State. If Ohio State is shutting down Penn State's ground attack, surely Michigan can with their excellent defense. So Michigan goes on the road. I think they win this game and they cover this number, quite frankly, because I've seen zero evidence of Penn State winning a big-time Big Ten game in James Franklin's tenure. What do you think here, Connor? Michigan, Penn State.
Yeah, we all know with Franklin, they are at home here. This would be, and this is an early game. This would be different a little bit maybe if it was at night.
And it's a stronger home field environment at Happy Valley Beaver Stadium at night for Penn State.
Yeah, that's why. It's very
important to point that out. Yep.
Like I thought if they had this at night, it would be a little bit better for Penn State. One thing with Penn State is we saw Ohio State have some, success, but to watch Indiana move the ball, and shout out to Indiana, they got it done last week for me. But even, big win against Maryland. They've owned Maryland, the last few years. They just kicked their ass again. They're a dog here, and I don't want them. It's just. I think Michigan could go in there. They're the defense that's been real. Can Penn State at home here score on this Michigan defense? Maybe. I don't think they can. Penn State defense could do anything with Michigan. I'd like to be on this under. It's just it's the number I think is about right there. So yeah, I just can't do it. I'm leaning under. I think Michigan does win. I got to see it to believe it. Here we got to see how can he in a big game because he didn't look good against Ohio State. And I think McCarthy can go in and get it done. So to all my Michigan guys, Big Show's in here earlier. Yeah, go Big Blue.
Yep,
I think they win.
Michigan or nothing. Until I see James Franklin win one of these games against an Ohio State or a Michigan, I don't trust him. He's got to show me. To show me.
Yeah, and the numbers though, are they real with this Penn State defense? It's just that they haven't played anybody. Michigan, they haven't played anybody. That's why this could be a little bit of a dogfight in this game. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But again, I've got to see Penn State get the job done in a spot like this before I'm certainly ready to back them.
Franklin has beat Michigan a couple times, like
Yeah, it was
5 years ago.
Yeah,
when
I mean,
Michigan was a
recent
little
memory, not so much. And really against Ohio State, they've had no success. So
I think they got
yeah,
blasted last year.
and this is the best Michigan team of the bunch, probably. And the shit storm that's swirling around the Michigan program right now with the sign stealing and all that stuff. And if anything, it's galvanizing them. They want to. It's like us against the world mentality they've taken. Because really, they destroyed Purdue, and if not for a backdoor cover, I mean, but they still were they wanted to prove a point last week too.
The story on that guy is great too.
It is,
yeah,
it is.
Funny.
It ain't going away. It ain't going away for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. That story either. All right, next up we got Texas Tech, Kansas. Kansas 3.5-point home favorite, 61 the total in this game. Kansas at home. I don't bet against Kansas. Okay, that ain't happening. There's just a strong home field. They have a win against Oklahoma on this field already this year. 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread. Bean, Jason Bean has been suitable at the quarterback spot, even with Daniels out. And he had a pretty good game last week. On the road, tough environment, potential letdown, and they beat Iowa State 28-21. He was good enough to beat Oklahoma at home, Jason Bean as well. So, Kansas at home, it's Kansas or nothing for me. And I was on Texas Tech last week. I thought it was a great spot, laying a short number at home against a down TCU team, and they found a way to win 35-20. But their defense is still a little bit leaky. They've given up points 3 straight weeks. That worries me here for Texas Tech. But Baron Morton being back definitely helps their offense. Right now, lean Kansas, lean over as well, 61. We should see points tonight, points on Saturday here in Lawrence, Kansas. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Kansas just been good at home, and it's tough to go against them. When I saw this, I just went to the over. As long as Morton's in, Dean, I think we get points. I think we get into a good shootout here, Big 12 shootout. One thing, Kansas needs to beat. They haven't beat Tech in a while. Texas Tech 9-1 the last 10 years or 10 matchups. Yeah, as much as I love Kansas here, because I was against them last week because it's the spot and all that. I kind of lean the other way with Texas Tech. I just want, is 3 enough? 3.5 enough here? I thought this was more 6 or 7 when I had in my numbers, but yeah, give me the over points.
All right, Big Ten, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, 11.5-point home favorites, 42 the total in this game. So Wisconsin has just dummied, put Northwestern in a body bag the last 2 years, 77-14 the last 2 years for Wisconsin over Northwestern. That being said, this Northwestern team and the guy that's running the show now with Fitzgerald, after Fitzgerald got shown the door for this Northwestern team, he has done a heck of a job to keep this team in it, competitive. David Braun, outstanding, in a brutal spot. Coming in and makeshift coaching staff. And this Northwestern team has been feisty. They've been competitive. They've been very competitive, really. Outside of the Penn State loss in Big Ten play, they beat Minnesota as 11-point dogs, cover the number in an 8-point loss on the road at Nebraska, win outright as 14.5-point dogs against Maryland at home. Last week in the neutral field game, Wrigley Field against Iowa, they fall short. They lose 10-7, but another good effort, competitive in the game. This is not a team I'm looking to lay 11.5 with against right now. Not at all with the effort we're seeing. Now, is their offense a little rough? Yes. Brendan Sullivan at quarterback with Ben Bryant injured. It hasn't been smooth sailing at all, and he's questionable again, Ben Bryant, for this game for Northwestern. But on the flip side, it's not like Wisconsin is lighting it up offensively. They've got cluster injuries on the offensive side of the football. Braylon Allen, questionable. Ches Malusi, the other big running back, out for the season. A couple wide receivers banged up. Tanner Mordecai's obviously missed the last few games. That being said, Mordecai is closing in on a return, and he's week to week, and he may be able to return for this game for Wisconsin. That being said, I've seen enough out of Northwestern with their competitive spirit to say I don't want to lay 11.5 against this team. So right now it's Northwestern or I leave the game alone. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, Northwestern got it done last week. Ugly game. I think this could be just as ugly in this matchup. I lean under. in this one too, and the points with Northwestern. Wisconsin's injuries, it was a bad spot for them with Indiana, and I thought they could win that. They didn't. Well, they are better here at home, but are they really? Almost 2 touchdowns with all these injuries. These are big to key positions too. Bavano, when you go through their injuries to big time players, and I don't know if Mordecai comes back. It's a maybe, like you talked about, but I think he's still another couple weeks away. Give me Northwestern in the points here and under.
All right, Arizona and Colorado as we move to Big 12 action. Arizona 10.5 point road favorites, 54-55 the total. This is already the final regular season home game, by the way, for Colorado. This is it. This is their last game in Boulder. They finish on the road after this at Washington State, at Utah. So pretty tough finish to the season. And this is getting to Dion, this losing streak they're on. You could see it in the post-game press conferences, this 3-game losing streak against Stanford, UCLA, and Oregon State that, it's just – he's had to tone it down a little bit. It's all this bravado and pumping his chest after the TCU win and a couple of those performances. Now it's just a little more docile from Deion Sanders here at the last few weeks. They got all kinds of issues. It's kind of a shit show already as far as the off-the-field shit. Like you've got Deion Sanders demoting Sean Lewis, the offensive coordinator, before the game against Oregon State. And now they've got Pat Shurmur in there now. It's not like he ran a great offense with the Giants when he was there in the NFL a few years ago. And yet they got him now part of the play calling on offense for Colorado. Shedeur Sanders is beaten to a pulp every single week. The O-line is still a big problem. The defense has actually been the best part of this team the last couple of weeks, but they get worn down in the second half of games every single week. I think they're running on fumes, and you can see the lack of depth. Everyone that was anti-Colorado and anti-Deion Sanders turning it around immediately said, lack of depth. They're going to get worn down as the season goes on. It's starting to look like that. And this Arizona team right now, there's no way I'm getting in their way right now. 5 straight covers, 8-1 against the spread, tied with UNLV for best point spread team in college football this year. Jed Fish, an outstanding job. Fafita has been great at quarterback, even without Jaden DeLaura. Win against Washington State, win against Oregon State and UCLA in back-to-back games, quality wins against good opponents. Now they're ranked. I actually think they might cover here. I'm not stepping in front of Arizona. They're really good. Colorado looks like they're running on fumes right now. I know they've covered the last 2 weeks, but that's the concern. I don't know if I'll actually lay 10 with Arizona because we've seen backdoor shenanigans from Colorado the last 2 weeks when they fall behind big and they get a backdoor touchdown to cover the number. Maybe we see that here, but I'm not stepping in front of Jed Fish's team right now. This has been quite the year for him turning around this Arizona program. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Arizona. I had the under. I had a money line last week. Noah Fafita for real. This kid's not big like I talked about, but he's for real, and he's got to be the quarterback the rest of the way. This is his job. Good one to DeLaura, but to me, I think it's his the rest of the way. The key is this team's playing great. I love them last week again at home. I like their defense. We get the under with UCLA. That number was a little bit too high. But now they go on the road, and not the easiest place to play. We know Colorado's not very good. Only bet I had on Colorado all year, the event last week. Thank God I'm the guy who needed that backdoor. They came through in the second half. So I had both these teams last week. I think Arizona does win, but now it's more than 10 on the road. I think they do it, but I don't want any of the bullshit that's going on. You mentioned the Colorado defense has been, all right at times. They're undersized, but they've been okay. Maybe you could look at an Arizona team total in this matchup if you don't want to lay the 10.
All right, Iowa State, BYU. We've got Iowa State 6.5 point road favorites, 42 the total. Big 12 action here. I can't believe I'm saying this, but please come back, Keaton Slovis. Didn't play last week for BYU in their game against West Virginia, and that's why I laid the points with West Virginia. Jake Retzlaff took over as the quarterback and sub 60% completions, not very good. BYU's in a world of hurt, and their defense is just lousy. I mean, that's now 3 of the last 4 weeks they've given up 35 or more points, and the only reason they gave up just 14 to Texas Tech, that was the game that Baron Morton didn't play for Texas Tech. So this defense is awful. Without Slovis, I think now if Slovis comes back, I think we could get this game over a very low total. But if he doesn't come back, it'd be hard for me to back BYU, even though they're at home, they're getting points. Do I want to lay 6.5 with Iowa State? Probably not. If Slovis does play, I'd probably go over, and I actually might take BYU, because if you actually look at BYU, they probably are undervalued now. They have faced a tough schedule last few weeks. I mean, they faced Texas Tech, they faced Texas, West Virginia. That's a pretty tough schedule the last 3 weeks. This is a bit of a step down for BYU here facing Iowa State, but I could only back him if Slovis is in. And if he is, I'll lean to BYU in the over. What do you think, Connor?
He's got to be in. He's got to be in. This team only plays better at home, and maybe he is. I think people saw this BYU at home.
4-0 at home, straight up.
Yeah, they're just don't go on the road. They're horrible. The defense is awful, and this opened 7.5. This is down to 6.5. I think people saw over the touchdown. They want that with BYU, how good they've been at home this year. Slovis has to play. I'm going to have to wait on that. But the BYU defense has not been great all year long, and I just can't get over it. If he doesn't play, they can't run the ball. I've talked about it. They just can't run the football. It's just you're going to put everything on the backup, which I don't love. So just to wait and see here.
All right, we go to back to the Pac-12, I should say. Washington State and Cal. Cal 1-point home favorites, 58.5, 59 the total in this game. Cal just got absolutely destroyed by Oregon, but hey, Oregon's pretty damn good. That can happen to anybody. 63-19 in that one. Washington State, just a terrible loss for them. They have really lost. They've fallen apart, really. I mean, what a start to the year. And 5 straight losses, only 1 cover during that time. What happened to Cam Ward and the offense last week? Couldn't get anything going against Stanford. I mean, just absolutely shocking to see that. 10-7 loss to Stanford as double-digit favorites. I actually think Cal might be the play here. Cal should have beat USC at home. Cal was pretty competitive with Oregon State at home. They beat Arizona State at home. They should have beat Auburn at home the first game. So they played good on this home field. It's a short enough number where, look, you're fading a team that's lost 5 in a row and has looked absolutely brutal in some of these games in doing so during this 5-game losing streak, and you can get them at a pick 'em. So for me, I could only look at the Golden Bears here. And look, Mendoza at quarterbacks, there's some potential there. He's still young. He's growing. He's improving. But there's definitely some potential there with him at the quarterback spot. And, of course, they got Jade Knott, the great running back. So lean to Cal here. I would lean over, too, but I don't know. I'm done predicting what Washington State's offense is going to do. It's feast or famine. They could score 30. They could score 3. That's what we've seen from them here in recent games. So, Cal, for me, what do you think, C-Mac?
I think you just got to trust, because I think this game they score points, but Mano, it's because Cal's defense is awful.
Yes.
It hasn't gotten better.
That's true.
Man, holy shit. This defense is rough, man. I mean, 63, 50 to SC the week before. Even Washington State, I think, scores. I think you take the over. And the Washington State defense is falling to shit. Yeah, Cam Ward, everything. The wheels have just fallen off. So I like the over here. I think you can get there. And Cal at home, this is where I want him. Washington State's not been very good on the road. And I think they lose here. Shout out to the chat, our guy, Paul Taylor, the Sailor. Good to see you, my man. Real Deal Prime. And shout out to Lamont Williams, my dude. His 7-team parlay last night. Congrats, my man.
Always good to hit one of those, Lamont. Good for you. Congrats. All right, next up, we've got Utah-Washington. A good one here in the Pac-12. Washington, 9-point home favorites, 53.5, 54, the total in this game. I've often said, and credit to Utah, credit to Whittingham. Shame on me thinking that Utah had that destruction at the hands of Oregon at home and they were just going to crumble, fall apart, go away. Not when you're coached by Kyle Whittingham. He's just such a good coach. He found the way to get the team back on track. 55-3. They were ready to go from the opening kickoff, and they dominated. They annihilated what had been a red-hot Arizona State team going into that game last week. Bryson Barnes was outstanding. The defense got back to that Utah defense. You can tell their pride was wounded after that game against Oregon, and boy, did they bounce back in a big way against Arizona State. I don't trust Washington laying this number right now. I know they're back home. They're still undefeated, but man, these have been some close calls, and these have been some close games lately. Even the USC game, it was a 10-point win, but that was a tight game the whole way. They failed to cover 4 straight before that. 8-point win against ASU, a 9-point win at Stanford, 3-point win against Oregon, 7-point win at Arizona. Look, I don't like betting Utah on the road as much as obviously as I do at home, but I think this is a spot where we can trust Whittingham to get the troops fired up to try to play spoiler. In Washington, there's a big gap in defense between these two teams at the moment right now as well. So lean as Utah right now for me. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, this seems like it's going to be a good football game. I get this, line just under the 10 points. Washington, just the bullseye gets bigger and bigger. They're undefeated. Yeah, in Utah, finally the streak gets busted, and they just whip Arizona State. That was a beatdown from start to finish. I wanted that early in the year, and I went against it, but Van Allen lost against Washington, taking them, and they were covering big numbers. But I had a feeling, I was catching some shit. I didn't think their defense was very good. I think it's okay, but when they're laying these big numbers and they haven't covered, like you just mentioned, the last 4 or 5 games, they're going to score in this one. Can this Utah offense on the road put up some points? I think they could. I think the game is a little bit closer. I kind of lean the points as well. I do think Washington could get the win, but this, I don't think it'll be easy.
No, it won't be easy. The one concern is Utah a little weaker against the pass compared to against the run, and obviously it's a team that almost exclusively throws the football. Well, they throw it a lot more than they run it, and Odunze is just an outstanding receiver. The chemistry with him and Penix Jr. goes without saying. Those two guys, they're on the same page all the time. But I don't know. It just feels like with Washington, their defense has shown enough cracks in the armor that I'm not comfortable laying 8.5. It would be Utah or nothing for me in this price range. All right, Arizona State, UCLA. UCLA 17-point home favorites, 46 the total in this game. I know they got their brains beat in by Utah last week on the road, a pissed off Utes team. I might come back to the well, though, with ASU here. It's just that's a lot of points to be laying with a plodding UCLA offense. I mean, that offense, Dante Moore, Garbers. I mean, Chip Kelly, I think, is a little underwhelmed with what he's getting at the quarterback spot right now for this UCLA team. Their offense has been the problem all year, but their defense is really good. That's been the strength of the team, but defense can only do so much. When your offense is struggling to finish drives and put points on the board on a consistent basis, I don't buy into last week being the sign of, okay, Arizona State back down to earth, they're going to crumble again. That being said, they are banged up at quarterback. Before I back Arizona State, you want to see what's going to happen here. Is Trenton Bourguet going to start? He's questionable. Drew Pine is questionable. Remember, Bourguet got injured early in that game against Utah over the weekend. They were down to Jacob Conover, the BYU transfer at quarterback. So keep an eye on that. That's the one thing that's keeping me off betting it now, but I still lean Arizona State, but check later in the week to see who's at quarterback for them. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Bourguet day to day, even both UCLA quarterbacks day to day. I think you still stay if Garbers is a go, you stick with him. Then more. I had to say they gave up a ton of points last week, but I think this Arizona State defense has been pretty good. And this number now has come down a little bit with both these teams. Like this would have been 5 weeks ago, but this would have been probably 52 or something like that, or higher. So we're not getting those numbers that we were the last few weeks. But UCLA, I think the defense is for real. It won't be easy for Arizona State to score. I like the under a lot in this game. And I kind of lean the points, too, with Arizona State. This is a ton. I don't know if I move on that, but I lean there.
All right. The Pac-12 theme continues. Stanford and Oregon State. We've got Oregon State 21-point home favorites, 54 being the total in this game. I mean, Stanford, and no one's going to talk too much about Stanford because the win-loss record still isn't great, 3-6, but it's still a magnificent accomplishment that they've won 3 games, honestly. And Troy Taylor, this head coach.
I got the team total with that. They lost to Sacramento State, which I thought they had to win that game.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I was going to get it. So
no.
I got it.
And
Over
they got
2.5.
it. And it was thanks to wins against Colorado, that crazy epic comeback against Dion in Colorado on that Saturday night or Friday night. I think it was Friday night, but it was Friday night, October 13th. And then the win against Washington State is 2 touchdown underdogs. I mean, this team is growing. You can tell. The defense is still rough, although they had a good game last week against Washington State. And Ashton Daniels is getting better as a quarterback right now for them as well. Oregon State, I don't love the idea, and they're great at home. I don't love going against them at home. And I think at home this year, they've been very good as far as winning by margin. But there's a lot of points. They haven't covered in 2 in a row. It's an offense that runs the ball a lot, takes time off the clock. That's asking a lot. Oregon State's not always been a good proposition, laying 3 touchdowns or more. Go back to that San Diego State game earlier in the year as evidence of that. So I don't know if I'll bet it, but a number feels a little high, slightly in Stanford. Don't know if I'll bet it, though. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, it does seem a little bit high. I mean, we know Oregon State better at home, and they cover numbers. I think they win here. But you mentioned both those games, the loss and then the win last week, were on the road for Stanford. The wins, or they beat Colorado at least. I think this is just too many points. The Stanford defense, what do we get from them? I still don't think they're very good. I think if you look Oregon State, you look their way, team total. Don't play the points here. Just go that route. But I wanted to look at this more because I think 3 touchdowns is a ton. I just don't know if I can get there in the end with Stanford.
All right, another Pac-12 matchup here, USC and Oregon. We've got the Oregon Ducks 15.5 point home favorite, 73.5 the total in this game. Look, they are playing Oregon. Playing spoiler, does it matter? I think deep down maybe it does, but I don't know if there's anything left in the tank physically, emotionally, mentally. That looked like a USC team that loss against Washington last week, and they played their guts out, especially on offense. And Caleb Williams, he played his heart out. He did everything he could. He was getting beat up a little bit in that game, kept leading them down the field, scoring points. And just over and over and over again, that absolute joke of a defense, an embarrassing defense, that sieve defense of USC just cannot even get one stop, can't get it to give Caleb Williams the ball back late in that game. And they suffer another loss, all because of the defense. And finally, the hammer dropped on Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator, fired. So
it's about time.
And look, I'm shocked, it took this long, but I'm also shocked it actually happened because he's been stuck like glue to the hip of Lincoln Riley from very beginning when he was hired at Oklahoma. I mean, those two have been together for many, many years, Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch. I'm actually shocked he actually did fire him finally after all these years when they've had 0 defense, his teams. Lincoln Riley's teams have had no defense all these years, Oklahoma and now here at USC. And he finally parted ways with him. I looked at the looks on the USC kids' faces. They looked demoralized after that loss because now they know everything's gone. No playoff, no Pac-12 championship. This is like Clemson Part 2. Now you're going to play in the fucking Belk Bowl or something, some rinky-dink bowl game that is not what they came back to. The Caleb Williams didn't come back to USC to play in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl or whatever the hell they're going to end up playing at this year. They were looking to be a Pac-12 champion or Rose Bowl at the very least, or a championship team. And there he is in the crowd, too. They showed a shot of him after the loss, Caleb Williams being consoled by his parents. You could tell he was crying because his body was shaking. And I said on Twitter, you know why he's bawling his eyes out? Because he has no defense on his team. He plays his guts out, his heart out every week, carries this team on his back, and he has 0 defense to support him. That's why he was crying on that sideline after the game. Just awful. Awful stuff from this USC defense that have just completely – the USC defense has completely and utterly sabotaged this season for Caleb Williams because he's a quarterback that deserves better than a garbage defense, better than a defense that gives up 20 yards to a running back without contact. First contact is like 25 yards down the field for a running back against this USC defense. It's totally embarrassing. It's like they've never studied how to be in your proper rush lanes on the defensive side of the football. It's like they never even looked at how to be proper in that regard with your alignment and your assignment, stopping the run. It's like they've never taught defense in any sort of way in terms of fundamentals on this USC football team. It's ridiculous how bad it's been on that side of the football. There's no way I'm taking USC. I know they're getting a ton of points here, and I know they changed the DC, and I think long term maybe that's going to help. But the same personnel that hasn't stopped anybody is
yeah.
On
still
Saturday in Eugene, and now you're facing Bo Nix and Bucky Irving in this offense that's lighting it up. That went to Utah and did a number on a defense that's a hell of a lot better than USC's defense when they went to Utah and put a huge number on the board, Oregon. So I'd actually lay it with Oregon, an Oregon team total over. I'm not convinced that Grinch is gone and now all of a sudden the defense is good. There's that theory that they step up after a coaching change, but I don't know about that. You got to have the personnel. They don't look like they have it on defense. What do you think here, Conor, USC, Oregon?
Yeah, it's not going to change anything. Yeah, at least now, or till next year, maybe. This over, SC over. It's just cash every week. Yep. Oregon's 8-2 the last 10 to the over. They score 63. Maybe. They score 50. You're right. The team total for Oregon. Look at, and even last week, this is a big number here too. I think it still gets over. I think SC will score some. I think they could get 28 or more as long as they're a go. So just take the over, or take the Oregon team total over.
And as we saw last week, 75.5 was not too high for that Washington USC total. So you can't always be scared to bet some of these totals in the 70s up and over.
I mean, it's there for a reason. And yeah. I get it. SC's getting 2 touchdowns here.
Yeah.
In all those games, they were favorites, but they're 2-8 ATS. Oregon's 8-1. So take a look at that.
All right, Baylor, Kansas State. Kansas State 21-point home favorites, 55.5 the total in this game. Baylor with a loss to Houston last week, pretty bad loss. That's 2 losses in a row. Iowa State and Houston for this Baylor team just continue to have problems. Just a disappointing year, 3-6. Even with Blake Shapen back at quarterback, the offense has been all right, but can't bail out a defense that hasn't been very good through much of the year. Kansas State, what an effort by Chris Kleiman's group. Against Texas. Looked like they were out of it. Bad first half. What a second half. Come all the way back, force overtime, and then lose an OT. Just a tough one for Will Howard and that Kansas State team. Can they pick themselves up off the mat? They're still 6-3, 5-0 at home, 5-0 straight up, and ATS, by the way, at home. They have won some convincing games here at home. 41-0 against Houston, 41-3 against TCU, 44-31 against UCF, 42-13 against Troy. They have really, really done well here at home. I don't trust Baylor enough. Do I lay it? I'm not sure, but I could only look at Kansas State here and the favorite in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a ton of points. I don't know if it's enough here with Baylor. There's been no consistency with them this year. It's just they're not very good on both sides of the ball. They lost last week to Houston by 1, which was tough. I think this is a good spot. We want Kansas State is at home, here. I know they're off the loss. They should win big. And we saw the 2 things of, about Will Howard on the road last week. The first half, 8 passing yards or whatever, nothing. And then slinging around for whatever he did, 280 and 4 touchdowns in the second half. K-State, when they play some of these lesser competitions, the defense has been huge. I thought Texas would score, and that game got over. I had that over. It was a 49, K-State, Texas in that game. I think their defense comes to play in this one. I'd lean under a little bit.
Next up, we've got Rice and UTSA. The Roadrunners here, 13-point home favorites, 59.5 the total in this game. Rice is a nice little undervalued point spread commodity right now. I'm telling you, that's 3 straight games they have covered. The blowout win at Tulsa off their bye week. And really, that's when this team started to really transform. Off their bye week, they crushed Tulsa 42-10. They took a very good Tulane team right down to the wire, 30-28. And then same thing with SMU, who's, another great team in this conference, 36-31. I think JT Daniels and the offense is getting better week by week. He actually is playing well the last few games. They've got weapons to work with. Of course, Luke McCaffrey, Christian's brother, Dean Connors. They've got some good weapons to work with on offense, no question. The defense, not great for Rice. They still give up a lot of points, but their offense has allowed them to hang in there. I think Rice is the only side I could look at. 3 straight covers. It's a lot of points they're getting here, 13. Lean over as well. I think they will struggle, though, against UTSA's offense, and because we have seen Frank Harris look healthy and look like the old Frank Harris again in recent games. UTSA has scored 49, 41, 36, 41, and 37 in their last 5 games. So Rice and over for me in this game. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, UTSA starting to look a lot better, a little bit of the team last year. But I over, as long as Daniels, he's day to day, it's a concussion. Hopefully he goes. He's in over in this matchup. And Rice, like you talked about, they've been good. Only 4-5, but 7-2 against the number. I took them 2 or 3 times, including last week. And this is a team when Rice was horrible the last couple of years. They didn't even score against UTSA. They lost 45-0, 41-7. But I think they could maybe hang here. I like Rice like last week at home, catching a number like this. I kind of lean the points, but I think you just take the over here. Daniels in, over 59.
And even if it's not Daniels, you're right. He left that game at halftime last week against SMU with the concussion. Chase Jenkins came in. He played well. He ran the ball a bit. He had a good completion percentage. Didn't have any. He did have 1 interception, but again, he's coming into the game off the bench against a pretty good team. I still thought he moved the football pretty well for Rice against a very good SMU team. So even if it is Chase Jenkins, not JT Daniels at quarterback for Rice, I still might stick to Rice and still might stick to the over here in this game on Saturday. All right, Indiana, Illinois, Big Ten. We've got Illinois, 6.5 point home favorites, 43.5, 44. The total. I like Indiana, Connor. We're seeing some late life from this Hoosiers team under Tom Allen. They do love this coach. They do. He's a player's coach. We've seen the celebrations when Indiana's won. This is a guy that relates to the players. He's got that energetic personality. And you're starting to see Indiana come to life here. They beat Wisconsin at home 20-14 outright as almost double-digit home underdogs last week. They take Penn State down to the wire the week before that. Brendan Sorsby rapidly improving the last couple of weeks at quarterback for Indiana. He has definitely played a lot better. Like I said, the play calling since Carey took over, the play calling duties has been improved for the Hoosiers as well. And you look at Illinois, they just continue to have trouble winning games at all, let alone winning by margin. I mean, they've won 4 games this year, Connor, 4 and 5. Toledo by 2, Florida Atlantic by 6, Maryland by 3, Minnesota by 1. I mean, every win has been right down to the wire. They have shown zero evidence of winning by any sort of margin. And now Indiana's playing the last couple weeks their best football of the season, especially on offense. So, yeah, this is a very live road underdog, in my opinion. I like Indiana. If you can go to play toe-to-toe with Penn State a couple weeks ago on the road, why the hell can't you play toe-to-toe with Illinois and maybe even win this game? So give me Indiana here. What do you think, Connor?
They go back to them, 3rd straight week to Indiana, like you mentioned. Indiana hasn't been great on the road, but the offense is coming around. And you talked about Illinois. They're 4 and 5. They haven't beat anybody. Like these games have been down to the wire. They still could turn the ball over. I think we get a close one. And Indiana, this rivalry has just played them well. So I think you take the points in this game. I'd lean under. Illinois' defense has been better, but this was a total I thought that needed to be probably 3 points higher to really pull the trigger on. So just lean under.
You know what? They missed Chase Brown, and Luke Altmaier has not been great this year at quarterback at all. I expected more out of him, the Ole Miss transfer. And look, I thought for sure that it wouldn't be a huge drop-off from Tommy DeVito, but Tommy DeVito managed the offense well. And Tommy DeVito, I'm watching him with the Giants yesterday after Daniel Jones got injured. I thought in a tough spot, he actually started to move the football a little bit in that game, Tommy DeVito. So we've got to put some respect on Tommy DeVito, no relation to Danny, of course. Put some respect on his name now. So, yeah.
I think a little bit. We got a ways to go.
He did have an interception too, which was pretty bad. But I mean, a tough spot, NFL. But Illinois does miss him. I thought for sure the drop off would be minimal with DeVito to Altmaier, and that hasn't been the case for Illinois. There has been a bigger drop off at quarterback this year. All right, Tennessee, Missouri. Tennessee 1.5 point road favorites, 58.5 the total in this game. I definitely am thinking about Missouri here, but coming off the hard-fought effort against Georgia, fell short. Played a pretty good game overall, even though they fell short. Do they bounce back here at home against Tennessee? I don't trust Tennessee fully on the road. They're only 1-2 on the road this year, this Tennessee team, including losses against Alabama and Florida, and they barely beat Kentucky on the road as well, 33-27. So it's not like Tennessee's been overly impressive on the road. But where's that psyche of Missouri after the hard-fought effort last week against Georgia? Like I say, I definitely lean here a little bit and don't take too much good in that UConn game. UConn was totally overmatched against Tennessee, 59-3 last week in that game. It was so easy that Milton rested most of the second half in that game. But lean Missouri here. Maybe some points can be scored. Tennessee's offense has been pretty good in recent games, no doubt. Josh Heupel's got that offense churning again. We know Missouri can put up points, so maybe this game can get over the total. And it was 66-24, 62-24 the last 2 years for Tennessee. So maybe the over is the better look in this game. What do you think here, Con?
Yeah, when I was going through this last night, this one was just tough for me. I lean Missouri at home because I think they play their best football. And I thought the defenses the last few weeks has looked all right for them. Against South Carolina, they held them down, and then even with Georgia. But I think both teams could score here. I just don't have a lot. I think we could get into a shootout. Tennessee has really kicked their ass the last few years, but I think Missouri at home here can move the ball on them as well. So this could be a good one, close game.
All right, next up, Auburn, Arkansas, still in the SEC. Arkansas, 2.5-point home favorites in Fayetteville, 49 being the total here in this game. Arkansas, off a bye week, offensive coordinator change, and
new team
from Arkansas. New
it's
offense.
Like the team of last year. Yeah,
and playing
totally
up-tempo
different
again. And KJ Jefferson apparently went to Pittman and said, I want to play up-tempo. I feel it doesn't suit me.
It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
When they were slow, it was hard to watch. That was ugly.
Yeah. I'm seeing them now with good design, play design. I'm seeing them with some creativity, wearing down the defense because of their tempo that they were running. I think it's a buy sign on Arkansas. I'm a little surprised they're only laying 2 here. That was a good win against Florida. Now their defense, that's the thing with going up tempo now. Your defense is on the field a lot longer too, and they had some issues, but definitely, I think there's a buy sign on Arkansas. And same with the total. I think overs now are the way to go with Arkansas because of all those low-scoring games. And now it's going to take a while for odds makers to catch up with the new and improved offense, the much quicker tempo. Auburn's not exactly a big-time over team, but, I think Arkansas could end up pushing this one toward an over. And we don't need a ton of points. It's only at 49 here in this game. So for me, it's Arkansas. For me, it's over with this game if I'm betting it. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, just wild to see all of a sudden right out of the gate too. They score like bang bang. That was the worst of it with that Mississippi State game before the bye. Like that was the worst fucking football game watched in a while. It was, and I was thinking Arkansas, like they didn't want to be there. Slow, just yeah. I'm like, what's happened to this team with Jefferson? One thing is Auburn on the road. I don't want them. I just don't want them. They won last week where that was Vandy. That was on the road, right? But they lost LSU. They lost at A&M. I was on them on that game against A&M. I had the points. And that was a defensive touchdown, Savannah, in that game. Like, they only had a field goal. Peyton Thorne is not a throwing quarterback. We all know me and him. My good old Peyton Thorne in the side. Arkansas's defense, solid against the pass. Like, I don't know how they're going to throw. I mean, they're 48th in the country, only give up 200 yards a game. So they're going to have to try to run it. This game's probably really good. I lean Arkansas, too, a little bit here at home under the field goal.
All right, Florida and LSU. LSU 13.5-point home favorite, 63.5 the total here in this game. I mean, it's an LSU game. We got to bet it over. I mean, that's the bet for me, over. Yeah, you just have to. I mean, this overrun for LSU it actually goes back to last year. Every LSU game this year has gone over the total. They have played 10 games, 10 overs for LSU this year, and another one that flew over the total last week with Alabama in that Saturday night showdown. Again, Jaden Daniels in the offense is electrifying. The defense, not so much. That's why LSU is going over the total every single week. And look, Florida, they scored enough points. I thought it was actually a really good game from Graham Mertz, but their defense couldn't stop Arkansas. Their defense couldn't stop Georgia the week before that. They gave up 39 to South Carolina. So this is a defense that's fallen apart. 5 straight overs for Florida coming into today. So rather than a side, just bet over and look for points. Plenty of them both ways. What do you think here, Connor?
Over. That's it. And these matchups too, the last few years.
I think he's going to play. Keep in mind, Daniels with the concussion had to leave the game against Alabama. Obviously, it's better if he plays. But Garrett Nussmeier is not a stiff. He's experienced. He's been in LSU for years. He can play a little bit. I wouldn't totally.
He can, but I want Daniels. Let's just say that, especially for the for the over. But he can play a little bit. You're right. 45-35. 49-42, 37-34, 42-28. These games just are back and forth, and I think this one is. We all know LSU's defense isn't great. I look at just the over full game, and then maybe these teams team total. Don't lay it here with LSU. This is getting out there, almost at 2 touchdowns. Just go team total.
Yeah. I think it was the best week for me with, I'm more of an over better with totals, and it was a hell of a Saturday with these.
There was overs.
It was just.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of that.
Yeah.
Our guy Mills hit me up. He loves overs as well, and I was throwing him some games, and he goes, "Wow, these are all coming through."
Ones I really liked all went over. SMU Rice, Georgia Tech Virginia, LSU Alabama. You go on down the list.
Oregon game.
Oregon game. Yeah. And Oregon Cal. Yeah. USC Washington, even though it was high, I went to the over in that game. It was a really good Saturday with a lot of high scoring football. And I think we'll see it at least in this game as well. All right. West Virginia. Oh, but keep an eye on the status. Nussmeier might play if Daniels can't go, but he is experienced. He knows the system and he can play. He's a solid, serviceable quarterback. He's not Daniels, but he's solid and serviceable if Daniels doesn't go. West Virginia and Oklahoma. We've got Oklahoma 12.5-point home favorites. The total in this game is currently 58 across the board. It's another one where it's hard to bet an under. Although Oklahoma's offense, kind of shut down by Oklahoma State. Can West Virginia do that? I like the West Virginia offense. West Virginia is going to score, I think, on Oklahoma because we have seen Oklahoma's defense kind of fall back a little bit. They've now given up 30, 29, 38, and 27 the last 4 games. Garrett Green's playing pretty well, and this West Virginia offense is humming. 39, 34, 41, 37 points for West Virginia in the last 4 games. Question is, what are you going to get from Oklahoma? Oklahoma's now failed to cover 3 in a row. I think West Virginia can stay inside the number just with how good their offense is playing alone. And last year when these teams met, it was a 3-point game. 2 years ago, it was also a 3-point game. Here in Norman, 16-13. Life and death, Oklahoma to win that game. So it would be over. It would be West Virginia for me, plus the points. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I like the points here with West Virginia. I think they'll move the ball. I think they'll run it on Oklahoma here in this game. And I think Oklahoma will have some success against West Virginia. That they just got into more of the shootout type game. And last week BYU just couldn't do anything. They were just, But these games before that, just a ton of points back and forth. Yeah, it could get over. Oklahoma off another, they lose there. I think they play better here at home, but I'm not rushing to almost lay 2 touchdowns. Give me the dog here.
Texas TCU. We've got Texas 10-point road favorites, 54 the total. No Chandler Morris, no TCU for me. I'll tell you that. This is not a team I've had any desire to back with their offense, with Hoover at quarterback. He hasn't been great. He was better, a little bit better last week against Texas Tech. Still not good enough to win the game or cover the point spread, though, against Texas Tech. And now against that caliber of defense that Texas can throw at them, although they kind of fell asleep with the big lead. I don't know if that was they had a bad game or they just fell asleep. Let's not forget, Kansas State didn't do anything in the first half. I think they kind of just fell asleep. Big lead, they got complacent, and it kind of allowed Kansas State. And remember, there was also a turnover that led to a Kansas State touchdown as well. But I don't trust TCU's offense without Chandler Morris to move the ball against Texas. So do I want to lay 10 with Texas on the road here? I don't know about that, but I know I don't want TCU in this game. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I worry with Hoover with the mistakes. He can't throw around bad. Yeah, interceptions. This has just been a good game between these two. normally. It's been tough for Texas against TCU over the years.
And we might finally see Quinn Ewers back. He's not finally, there's now a possibility he comes back after missing the last couple of games. And after what I've seen from Malik Murphy, he's been all right. They'll be happy to have Quinn Ewers back.
Yeah. And the biggest problem was last week was I was like, if he's clean, they'll be good. They're rolling a little bit early. And then the interceptions come, the turnovers for Murphy. But they ended up winning the game in OT. This one's just tough. Texas hangs on. I don't know if this one will be easy too. It's hard to this TCU team. I just can't put my finger on it. I don't know. After last year's glory, they're just up and down. I think they'll be pumped though for this one, and I get why this is at 10 and even come down to 9.5. This is a wait for me.
All right, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. A&M 18.5 point home favorites, 44 the total. I don't want Mississippi State. This is A&M or pass for me. I'll tell you that right now. Mississippi State's been one of the great things I got right in college football this year is taking Mississippi State under their team win total, taking Mississippi State, betting against them often. I've been able to do that this year, and they've had a rough year. Their defense it's actually been okay, but their offense, like I say, Zach Arnett's ruined the offense. Like Will Rogers has been out, I get that, but they go away from air raid, which was working so well, fit the personnel of this team perfectly, and just hasn't been the same. Mike Wright hasn't been good since Will Rogers got hurt. They've been a terrible ATS team, 1-2-7 against the spread this year. So it's A&M or pass them. The one concern is the last time I trusted A&M double-digit home favorites against South Carolina, they only won by 13. So they didn't cover the number, but that might keep me off. But I don't want Mississippi State. Connor, what do you think?
I can't take Mississippi State. This is where they play their best football. A&M. I haven't really bet A&M all year. I know a lot of our friends and colleagues do. I think this is a good game though for Max Johnson, who got banged up. Man, he was getting rocked in that game against Ole Miss. I think they get the win here. Maybe look at their team total. Before that, like out of that Arkansas game, Mississippi State, I just don't trust this defense. Like I think A&M should get to 35 easy or more, and that kind of pushes this total over. But with the quarterback situation, everything going, the Mississippi State team, they can't score. They can't move the ball, at all. So lean to lay it with A&M, but just maybe stick to their team total in this game.
All right, Pitt and Syracuse. Gosh, this is pick your poison if I've ever seen it. Pitt 2.5, 3-point road favorites. 37.5 being the total. You got two offenses. And keep in mind, too, another reason why Boston College, that game was way closer than it should have been, was Garrett Schrader was a late scratch for Syracuse. Didn't play due to injury. And Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who is just brutal, by the way, for Syracuse, just terrible. Carlos Del Rio Wilson had to play at quarterback, and he really struggled. I don't want Syracuse. It's been fade Syracuse week in, week out for me the last few weeks. Virginia Tech against them, cashed. Boston College against them, I had that cashed. But I don't know if I trust Pitt enough, man. Pitt looks real bad. There's been some finger pointing. Pat Narduzzi threw his players under the bus after the Notre Dame game. Yeah, they fought hard for a half against Florida State, but they got worn down. I don't know if I want to lay points with them on the road, but I know I don't want Syracuse. It's probably a pass for me. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, these. Yeah, you've been betting on these teams. You haven't been doing that great this year. Pitt's played to some overs. They've been the shit on the road. That's their problem too. If you back Pitt, you've been a couple times at home.
Yeah,
but man, so it's tough to just take them here in the Carrier Dome. And one thing we talked about last week, Syracuse scored 10 points again. 7, 3, 10, and 10. Those are the points they've scored the last 4 weeks. I don't know how they get more than 10 in this game. Maybe they do. But this is tough to take an under, even though I lean that way at 37.5. Like this is 40 or right around that area. I would hammer this under. I still lean that way. And I just can't take Syracuse. Even as a dog here at home, I don't want him.
If it's Schrader, I pass. If it's Del Rio Wilson, look, Christian Veilleux is still a work in progress. He's a Canadian quarterback, by the way, for Pittsburgh.
Shout out to the Canadians.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for him, but he's faced Florida State and Notre Dame the last 2 weeks. I think if he's in and it's not Schrader for Syracuse, definitely I would have to lean to Pitt to win this game because I think there would be a quarterback edge at that point, and a step down in class too for Bayo and Pittsburgh's offense after facing Notre Dame and Florida State the last 2 weeks. All right, Maryland, Nebraska, just 2 games left. Maryland 1.5-point road favorites, 45 being the total in this game. I was disappointed by Nebraska just when we're starting to see them, win some games, cover some numbers, a winnable game, albeit on the road against Michigan State, who are really struggling and they fall short. They lose 20-17. I would lean to them, though, here because Maryland's fallen apart, man. This has been a rough. Now, they are off a bye. That's significant, the late season buys. No, they aren't actually. Both of these teams.
No, they lost to Penn State.
They both played Saturday. I'm looking at something else. Yeah, Maryland blown out by Penn State 51-15. They're now 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games. I don't know if I'll get there after they burned me last week, but lean Nebraska as a slight home underdog here. Still the better defense probably is Nebraska right now. Maryland's defense just falling apart again here the last few weeks. What do you think here, Connor?
Classic Maryland. Kind of like, because if this team starts out.
has done this before. Second half swoon, yeah.
This is the shits. They do this fucking every year. They come out like 4-0, 5-0, and they just start losing games in conference. Man, this one's tough. I lean Nebraska. I don't know if you do, but man, I have their win total under.
I have over 7 with this fucking Maryland team. I'm worried if they're going to even get.
Oh, okay. But you have under Nebraska, don't you, or no?
Yes.
No, I do. I'm glad they lost last week. Let's just put it that way. I thought they could maybe beat Michigan State. They don't. I think they could win here, and I think this would be their last win of the year when I was going to look at their schedule last week. Just tough. I don't think I can take anything in this game. Pass.
All right, final game, also in the Big Ten, Michigan State, Ohio State. We've got the Buckeyes, 31.5-point home favorites. Total in this game, 47.5. You look at the last year's meeting, 49-20 for Ohio State. The year before, 56-7. The year before, 52-12. I mean, it's just been absolute destruction. I don't want Michigan State. Do I want to lay 31.5, though, with this? This is an offense that's very much it's okay. It's not great. It's not C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Stroud, what a day yesterday against Houston. Shout out to him for that great performance for the Houston Texans. But we're seeing a pretty steep drop off him to Kyle McCord right now for Ohio State. That was not a pretty offensive effort against Rutgers. And it was life and death to cover the number if you laid the points with Ohio State in that game. So I don't want to lay this many with Ohio State, and I don't want Michigan State. So pretty clear pass for me. Connor, what do you think here?
Yeah, this is a ton of points in this game. They just haven't been able to click, and get going. McCord, the whole offense. And, Ohio State's defense has been great. Rutgers is moving it. They just settle for field. They can't ever punch anything in down there. But all year long, the Ohio State defense has been great. I don't see Michigan State doing much in this game at all. It's just, do you want to lay it? Maybe the Ohio State team total.
Because Ohio State's not explosive on offense at times like they've been in the past. Yeah, maybe the under.
This could be the weird, though, like Purdue game.
Yeah.
41-7. It's like something like that, or 38-14. That seems like
a late score to put it over the total, like the Purdue game. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I couldn't take the under. I thought it was just a little bit too low, but Ohio State wins here.
Yeah, Hauser was a little bit better at quarterback for Michigan State. He's replaced Noah Kim the last few weeks, and that was.
He has been better. That was the best move they made, and yeah, definitely.
Positive steps in the right direction for him at least last week. All right, great stuff. Another great hitting the books college football show right here on Pub Sports Radio. Shout out to the chat. Hit the like button. We've got the Monday Night Football live stream. Chargers Jets. I'll be on tonight for the first half. Jets. As always, make sure you.
What do you got, Babano?
Jets. Jets.
I love the Jets. I don't trust
the Chargers laying more than a field goal on the road against a good defense, which the Jets still have. They have a lousy quarterback and lousy offensive situation right now, but they do have a good enough defense.
One thing they played well too is even Wilson, who's just tough to watch at times. Our guy Jose, the back, can attest to that. Is their defense steps up, and these big Sunday night or Monday nights they've played better. Yeah. This is Monday Night Football. Place should be pumped. And I don't trust the Chargers to win by 4. I'll dare them.
They've been good in prime time. They should have beat Kansas City at home in prime time on the Sunday night football game a few weeks ago.
They beat Buffalo week 1
when Rodgers got injured. Yeah. So home primetime games has been their sweet spot. I think 2-0 ATS in these spots, the Jets this year, home primetime games.
Well, I'm on with it. I'm on.
Yeah, same here. Jets plus the points. All right. So we'll be cheering that on tonight on the Monday Night Football live stream. Connor, time to wrap it up. Final thoughts.
Yeah, another great show. Ripped through it. Excellent timing. As always, shout out to everyone in here. Ian. Shout out to my guy, John Z with the $20 dono. Hell yeah, man. We appreciate that. As always, somebody mentioned there will be not a college basketball show today, but we're working on it. There will be one out, the next few weeks, hopefully. We'll get going. Football dying down here, college football. There will be some sort of basketball show in the afternoon going on, and we will figure that out. But Steve G, James S, Andrew G, shout out to all the members too. Paul Taylor, Al, as always in here, Andrew G, everyone. And hit the like button. That's all we ask for in the end, right, Papano? Give us a like. We appreciate it. Let's get it. Let's have another great week in college football.
It was a great week last week. Let's see if we can have another one. Thanks to everyone for joining us. For Connor, Mac, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy the week of college football action ahead, and we'll be back next Monday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of Hitting the Books right here on Pub Sports Radio. Class dismissed.